The knights rise up in the direction of power. They cry out to see the emperor who brought the invaders to their knees, the emperor who crushed the traitors. They shout and praise. They shout that their emperor is the one who defeated the infidels. They are the great defenders of their faith. They are the great defenders of the Messiah. The knights raise their arms in joy and shout that they have crossed oceans, mountains, and deserts and conquered 3 continents. There is a majestic silhouette on a horse at the edge of the mountain. The knights continue to shout that they are the great heroes of Lemuria. The name of this noble man is Hercules, the supreme emperor of the 3 continents, the emperor of divine light. This is Hercules the First. Hercules proudly raises his sword as he listens to the praises of his subordinates. Once upon a time, there was an emperor who turned the endangered Lemurian Empire into a great power spanning 3 continents. The story of Hercules begins from an early age. On the territory of Lemuria, Hercules runs hysterically screaming that this will not happen. He shouts, riding on a horse, that he never wants to be an emperor. Hercules is the 3rd prince of the weak, dying empire of Lemuria. Due to the death of his father, the late Emperor Hadrian III, the place of the emperor became vacant. Initially, he should not have been admitted as heir to the throne, but since his 2 older brothers were very poorly educated and did not fit the role of heirs, now he is forced to take the place of the next emperor. The idea of being the emperor of a small and weak country, let alone a great one, is more unbearable to him than any form of punishment. Hercules is angry that because of his not smart brothers, he is now forced to become the emperor of the country. He shouts that he wants to live a calm and unhurried life for the rest of his days. Behind her, the girl asks Hercules not to be so selfish. Hercules recognizes this voice and realizes that he has already been caught up. This is Caroline. She is his childhood friend and used to always keep an eye on him. Hercules is angry. He would never have thought that she would go so far just to catch him. Carolina rides after him and asks why he is running away, and he asks if she is still running after him. Carolina replies that, of course, if she doesn't run after him, she won't catch him. She shouts at him to stop running away and become an emperor. He angrily asks her if she's kidding. He's not going to become the emperor of a weak and empty country that will soon be destroyed. At some point, Caroline reaches out her hand and grabs him by the scruff of the neck. She pulls him sharply that Hercules descends from his horse and falls to the ground. He doesn't have time to settle down and open his eyes, as Caroline saddles him so that he can't even stand up. She proudly tells him that she has caught him, and Hercules just clenches his teeth in anger and looks at her with resentment. Previously, the Lemurian Empire had a territory that stretched across 3 continents and was the world's greatest military, economic, and cultural power, leaving its mark on the world. Leaving their mark on the world, this empire was built by the elves. Priests, women, power all elves. However, this country, once proclaimed the most powerful state in the world, was divided by a civil war into East and West, and the western half of the country was destroyed. The Eastern Lemurian Empire also continues to decline as a result of the invasions of various races. Hercules reflects intensely that a territory that has lost 60% of its possessions and is still in decline, and trade in a country that is deprived of many grain lands and access to the sea, is becoming almost impossible. He thinks maybe that's the reason. At this time, an old man approaches the guys in the field and asks how they are doing. The young people understand that this is the 19th emperor of the Lemurian Empire, Hadrian III. They bow to him and say that everything is going well thanks to his efforts. He says that if everything goes well, the country will not starve this year, rejoices at this, and apologizes to the common people for these difficulties. They turn to Hercules, the little one next to them, and ask how he is doing, because they live on very large lands, and they will decide how this country will develop in the future. Hercules does not answer anything, and reads a book in a sitting position, tells him to follow him, but he does not obey. He approaches him and says that he will give him a tour of these lands, and he can finish reading the book later. Hercules raises his head, looks around and starts reading again, saying that it's just a wheat field, so he'd better read a book. Takes the book from him and says that whoever wrote this book saw the world as it is, and this book captures this world. He says that just by reading a book, he will not be able to experience the same emotions as in real life. Hercules is sulking at these words. Hercules looks around and sees 2 people at work. He asks his father what it is. Explains that they harvest wheat from the ears in order to make bread from these grains, which they eat. He sees that their hands are getting tired of the gun, and thinks that it seems uncomfortable to use it. Hercules points to the others and asks his father, how about using something like a comb instead of sticks? Stands at a loss and does not understand what the combs have to do with it. As a result, they all try to do it. The workers cheerfully shout that it's so easy and their hands don't get tired at all. The little girl says that this way she can grind several ears at once. Hercules explains that instead of relying on the strength of one hand, the fruit is much easier to pull with both hands, while relying on its own weight. And if you make a small platform, even small children can do it, hinting at a little girl. Hercules proudly says that this will save them a lot of effort and significantly increase their productivity. His father tells him it's great, asks him how he knew this, and he tells him that they have existed since the Edo period and were created by farmers who were creating various innovative tools at that time. Hercules falls silent, not knowing how to justify himself to him now. He hides his gaze and awkwardly says that he means that he read about it in a foreign book. His father proudly says that his son is a know-it-all. Hercules thinks to himself that there is no such thing in their library and archives. Hercules has his own secret. He has knowledge about more advanced science and technology, which he keeps secret. People often called him a child prodigy, and his father gave him everything he ever asked for. But it is precisely because of this knowledge that he loses his freedom and is greatly overestimated. Returning to real time, Caroline demands that he finally become emperor. Hercules looks at how Caroline presses her hand on his stomach, begins to blush and asks her to get off him first because she is heavy. Caroline says that as she gets off, he will run away again. She begins to say that she feels something solid from below. Then Hercules, in hysterics and panic, begins to scream loudly. Caroline begins to persuade him again and asks him to become emperor. He has the knowledge and abilities to become emperor. He refuses again and shouts that he will never be emperor. Hercules says all in a sweat that he wants to travel when he grows up. That's why he's just accumulating knowledge now. He's not going to become a servant of this country. He is already demanding that she get off. He declares firmly that he will not be deprived of his freedom by the emperor. She says, does this really mean that he doesn't want to be with her? Hercules thinks about it and looks at her questioningly. Caroline says that she loves and wants to protect the country where his father, Emperor Hadrian, ruled, and she has always wanted to see the new Lemurian Empire created by Hercules. She begins to cry bitterly and says she wants to see Hercules become emperor. He abruptly gets up in fright and in a panic asks why she is crying. She tries to say something and sobs. Hercules overcomes himself and swallows. He humbly tells her that he will take Caroline on a trip with him. She calms down and asks if it's really true. He replies, stroking her head, that it's true. He will do anything for her that she wants. She asks if he will let her read a book about martial arts, which his mother forbade reading. He tells her to read. She asks if he will come to drink tea. He answers hastily that he will come. She asks if he will become emperor, and he answers without thinking that he will become emperor. There is silence. Hercules looks at her, and she looks at her, and she looks at him expectantly. There are no tears at all. She abruptly grabs him by the scruff of the neck and drags him along. He screams, sprawling on the ground. What is she doing? Caroline turns around and says that a warrior must use any weapon to win. That's what Hercules' father said. He plaintively calls her by name, and then, horrified, shouts to the whole forest that she has deceived him. Thus, in the presence of many of his subjects, he safely ascended the throne and became emperor. Hercules sits on the throne, snaps and pulls his crown, says it sucks to be stuck in a country like this. He reflects out loud about the ongoing trade deficit, the territory that continues to shrink due to the invasion of other races, which is why the nation continues to lose its territorial viability. He cannot believe that his father died ruling such a country. He says with despair that his freedom lasted so little, and now his imperial life has begun. Suddenly, a cloudy dark hand appears behind him, and then the entire silhouette of a woman with long hair who is floating in the air. She claims that she has already told him that he is destined to become emperor. She has given him a lot of knowledge about the other world, so she hopes that he will succeed. That's right, he has a lot of knowledge from another world, but it didn't originally belong to him. The one who owns this knowledge was born and raised on planet Earth in a country called Japan. I think his name is Sarari Ishichi. In short, all the problems that have arisen so far, he was able to solve only because he has knowledge from another world. The reason for this is all the work of this bizarre demoness. Her clothes are covered in blood, she has long dark hair and a sly smile. He asks her if she has any idea at all how long she had a headache because of this. In another life, he was such a boring and stupid person, but still, knowledge is certainly useful. The demoness tells him that she has high hopes for him. She calls him a future great hero and then disappears. Hercules begins to shout on his nerves that he is bursting with the desire to abdicate. Then another man comes in and, with a sigh, tells Hercules that he does not look like a man who has just ascended the throne. This is Christopher Augustus. He is the uncle of Hercules. Hercules suspiciously asks him if he is really his relative, although he does not look like a member of his family at all. He holds out his index finger and menacingly asks, anyway, it was he who suggested this idea to his father. Hercules tells his uncle that even though he had two brothers, he put him above them. He calls him the one who hinders him. He says thoughtfully that he doesn't remember doing anything in particular, but Adrian talked a lot about him. Uncle lists that Hercules could speak at the age of 2, and at the age of 3, they could read and write. At the age of 4, he reread all the books in the castle, but this was not enough for him. Hercules covers his ears and asks him to shut up. In addition, my uncle heard that he invented senbakoki, thereby increasing the efficiency of wheat harvesting, and since then, their wheat production has been growing exponentially. Uncle says with a smile that the people and the former emperor were very pleased. In any case, his accession to the throne, as he believes, was the right decision. Hercules sighs heavily and says dreamily, if only they would rise up against him. Then a subordinate comes and turns to the imperial majesty in a panic. The uncle jokingly says with a smile that a man has come who is going to revolutionize the atmosphere. Hercules tells him that he's really bad at timing. This is Galphus Galanos, Caroline's father. He apologizes to Hercules and says that from now on they need to discuss issues related to the administration of the empire together. Hercules covers his ears from the noise and says that he now understands who Caroline is taken after. A young guy appears from behind and asks him not to talk like that, because Galphus is always like that. This is Lucanos Lucalios, the patriarch of New Lemuria. Hercules asks Lucanos if he has been here all this time, and he tells that he is terrible. Hercules says resignedly that a maternal relative, a military man, and a eunuch are currently in the room, and he himself is a 12-year-old emperor. Hercules stands up and says that this country is doomed. Ichi takes off the crown and hands it to them, saying that they can continue playing politics on their own, and he will just have fun in the library while everything is going to a bad place. Lucanos says with an awkward smile that there doesn't seem to be anything they can do, they'll have to rely on Lady Caroline again. A little later, Hercules looks dreamily out of the window and sighs, saying that he was born into a terrible world to become the emperor of a dying country. He remembers the faces of his citizens, who beg him to save their countries. He strains, remembering the noise of people. He closes the book and says, addressing them, that they are the only one who gives quiet peace and relaxation. He says out loud that there is a lot of knowledge waiting for him outside this castle, but only they help him to know his true nature. He smiles and says that books are the best partner to get him out of this narrow world. He opens another book in anticipation of what kind of world they will offer him today. Then Caroline abruptly appears from the corner and calls him in a panic. Hercules is terrified and shouts at the whole library. He awkwardly asks what happened, and she says with displeasure that he is stuck here again. She screams that she hurt him because he is shirking from work again. Hercules resentfully says that they told Caroline everything again. Hercules says that since there are so many people here, he doesn't have to engage in politics. He reminds her that he doesn't force them. He says that just the title of emperor is enough for him. Carolina looks at him haughtily and then asks if he doesn't understand anything about politics. He gets angry and asks her what she just said. Caroline turns away and says it's a pity, even though he was recognized by Adrian. She leaves, saying what a shame it is. She thought that Hercules would be able to solve the country's financial problems in an instant. She says that, apparently, she was mistaken after all. Hercules is only 12 years old. Then Hercules' ear twitches at these words. She keeps telling him what his father would think if he heard it. Hercules gets up and asks her if she really thinks he's a child. She turns to him, and he laughs and says that of course he understands politics, but what did she think? How much knowledge does he have about the world, in her opinion? Hercules resentfully says that it will be easier than ever once he fully understands what the problem is. Caroline asks, but he can't do it now. Hercules is even more angry, and he says that if she insists, He promises that he will improve the financial situation of the empire within 3 years. Caroline looks at him happily, and he sets a condition that in return, if he really solves all the problems, she will fulfill one of his requests. Carolina thinks about it at first, then agrees, saying that she will do whatever he asks. He gloatingly says that she agreed to it. This is the story of the difficult journey of the young emperor Hercules, who used his knowledge to conquer 3 continents as the Emperor of Divine Light. New Lemuria has changed a lot. It is now better known as the city where 2/3 of the world's wealth is located. The empire accumulated huge wealth from the transportation of goods through its territory. The prosperity of the empire, sustained over the years, is supported by transit trade, aided by its favorable location. However, this transit trade has 2 disadvantages, the first of which depends on the political situation and economic conditions of imports and exports at the destination, and the second, in this case, all the wealth will inevitably flow through a neighboring country, namely the main enemy of the greatest empire, the kingdom of furs. Hercules stands in front of a huge bookcase with books, takes one, reads with interest, and then closes it, drawing conclusions. He says this means that the Lemurian Empire needs to find another source of income independent of transit trade. All the people in power begin to rejoice, telling Hercules that he is finally motivated. Hercules snorts angrily, but does not deny anything. Everyone looks at each other in shock, not realizing that this has happened to him. His uncle happily says that he has finally made a decision. Now he is the real emperor. The believer speaks with plans that they will be able to prevent the destruction of the Lemurian Empire. Hercules looks at them with fatigue and says that he has not done anything yet. Her father praises and strokes her, saying that she is doing well. She's also happy and agrees. Hercules looks at them with hatred. He recalls his words that he would improve the Lemurian Empire within 3 years. Now he thinks how stupid he is, but he realizes that there is nothing he can do. Sweat is running down his face, but he's blushing at the same time. A girl turns to him and asks if it's not a crazy idea to improve your financial situation in 3 years. Hercules touches the book and replies that it is possible, so he begins by lightly exporting goods. He says that with the exception of wheat, which is a staple food in the empire, grapes and olives are also grown here. They are processed into the empire's main exports, wine and olive oil. These are the main export and financial resources of the empire. He says that all countries of the world produce these goods, and the handicraft production of the furs kingdom is developing no worse than in the Lemurian Empire. Because of competition with them, they practically do not make a profit. He says that in order to start rebuilding their finances, he is thinking about creating a special Lemuria product. Everyone is listening with interest. Then the maid comes to them. Everyone turns around. She has cups and a teapot. She takes each cup, pours the liquid, and hands it to them. Everyone is looking at the drink with tension because it is black in color. They don't want to drink. Hercules easily takes a sip and tells the others not to hold back. He's just been made. They want to resist and say something too. Hercules smilingly tells them to try it soon. They all take a cup. One of them says out loud that he has a strange smell. Before that, everyone sniffs suspiciously. They all take a sip at the same time with calm faces. The man and Caroline herself writhe from the taste and say that it is disgusting. And that priest says with a smile that she feels cheerful and that she likes it. Caroline says, addressing, "Is this some kind of medicine? It is too bitter for her." Hercules replies that he understood her. He takes the cup from Caroline and offers to try it in a different way. He adds milk to it, carefully stirs it. He gives the cup back. Caroline looks closer and sees the cat's face on the surface of the drinks, painted with cream. She rejoices at the sight of the cat. Hercules tells the others that he added it to their mugs, so let them try again. They all try it together again, then their faces start to sparkle. They say it's easier to drink now, but the priest says she liked the one before. Caroline turns to and says happily that it is very tasty. Hercules smiles and tells everyone, pointing to the cup, that it is coffee. They don't understand what kind of coffee it is. Carolina turns to her father and asks if he knew about him. The father honestly replies that he did not know, had never heard of something like this. Hercules gently rubs the remaining foam on Caroline's lips with his finger and says that he found out about this drink on the train a few years ago. It was grown in the church so that the ministers could be in a state of vigor for a long time. He says that there are few sources of water in this country, and the water that can be obtained is very difficult to drink. That's why Lemuria's main drinks are grape wine and another drink that can be stored for a long time. But if they drink, they end up getting drunk. So the aristocrats who have money drink tea imported from the East, but it is still very expensive because of imports. Coffee has no established production methods, and above all, it can be grown in conditions of Lemurian climate and soil quality. It was only natural that if they sold it as a special product of the empire, it would attract some attention. Everyone is silent. The priest only replies that it is clear to her. The uncle of Hercules also replies that he understands everything. He agrees that this coffee should be sold as a special product. He turns to and tells him with displeasure that he is not impressed, who does not understand, and offensively asks what this means. He says that just to show them this drink, he bought a tea set in one of the silk countries of the East. White porcelain, which technically can only be produced in the silk lands of the East, is very expensive, as he surely knows. Hercules raises the cup and calmly says that this porcelain was also made in Lemuria. Everyone is looking at Hercules and the cups themselves in shock. The priest tells him that this is impossible. Isn't such a white porcelain a patent of the silk country of the East? Even the furs kingdoms don't have such technology, let alone Lemuria. Hercules listens to her and calmly drinks coffee. Hercules says that this is bone china made in London around the 18th century. They do not understand what London is. Hercules ignores and says further that the white color of this porcelain is obtained from animal bones. Hercules says what he means. Until now, all the porcelain they made was black, so he decided to replace it with white. Actually, it is still at the experimental stage, but the white color is very beautiful. The uncle of Hercules, in a fit of emotion, pulls and shouts that this is already amazing. Uncle picks up a cup of coffee and says that for a long time he thought that Lemuria was in a state of stagnation, but it turns out that it had such an exquisite technology. Father Caroline says he never would have imagined that would show them something so amazing and so sudden. Hercules at this time thinks that he had to pay quite a lot for the craftsman who made this porcelain to make it as quickly as possible when he left the palace. He tells his subordinates that, however, the porcelain is still far from ideal, and so far they have too little coffee to sell it. There is a handful of coffee beans on a napkin on the table. Hercules says that first they need to raise money and find artisans capable of making porcelain. He decides to sell to the aristocrats and merchants first. The set consists of two parts, bone china and coffee. Hercules smiles resolutely and declares that coffee and porcelain, they will sell them as special products of the empire. Everyone happy and cheerful agrees with him. Caroline says that thanks to this, they have hope for a slight financial recovery. Her father is enthusiastically invited to start selling them already. Hercules listens to them and thinks to himself that until they establish a monopoly on these products, porcelain and coffee will never change the situation. And even if they manage to do this, the financial situation of the empire will improve in at least 5 years. He understands that he needs to improve it in 3 years. He goes to the window, looks at the sky, and says that now all that needs to be done is to dig through the administrative documents. In the castle, he rereads a bunch of books, then sits down at the blackboard and begins to draw using a ruler. He draws everything, sighs tiredly, and drinks his own coffee to cheer up. 3 months after he started digging through the administrative documents, he finally figured out the problem. Books, scrolls, and documents are scattered around. He says, looking at the trend lines in the drawing as he expected, the increase in military spending and the deterioration in tax efficiency are the main problems that are slowing down their economy. A little later, he assembled a round table for negotiations. Hercules says that everything is ready and suggests that we start already. He apologizes for the sudden meeting, but he thinks they need to take urgent action against the empire. All the employees are sitting and do not understand, but is this really normal? Because he is only 12 years old. Hercules is just drinking his coffee, and Caroline is angry at those who say something about him. Hercules says that they will start, then draws attention to the boy next to him, and says that he has not seen him before. The boy says in a panic that his name is Kroll. Today he will be responsible for all the records. Hercules smiles and asks Kroll to tell him about their tax system, who listens to him and begins to tell him. He says that the imperial tax system consists of 6 main types of taxes: land tax, poll tax, trade tax, import tax, military tax, servant exemption tax. Then he concludes by adding that they have a monopoly on salt. Hercules thanks him and says that he is doing well. Let him continue in the same spirit. Kroll stands and convulsively thinks about the fact that praised him. Hercules begins to generalize about the tax systems just mentioned. Hercules says that the poll tax, the merchant tax, the merchant tax, the import tax, the servants' exemption tax, and the salt monopoly should be abolished or revised. At first, everyone freezes in their facial expressions, digesting the information, and then they shout what he said, how they will collect taxes if they canceled him. Hercules tells everyone to calm down and promises that he will explain everything now. First of all, he talks about the poll tax. Uncle hands him a list. Hercules says that this is a list of information about people in the empire from whom they collect poll tax. Hercules asks Kroll to take a look and asks what he thinks about it. Kroll looks at it and says there are too many women here. Hercules screams that this is a point. Moreover, there are too many people with disabilities here. He says that the poll tax in the empire is higher for men than for women, and the tax is even lower for people with physical disabilities. These reports are simple sheets of paper. A family of 4 men and 2 women can receive tax benefits simply by writing down that there are 2 men and 4 women in their family. Someone arises and says that there are 10 million people in this country. All people cannot be checked. Hercules himself agrees with him. He says that this is why, since horses cannot verify this in any way, people began to attribute visual and hearing impairment to themselves and evade taxes in every possible way, and they succeed. Hercules addresses all politicians and asks if they can say with full confidence that this information is correct. Their facial expressions change, they start to panic. Hercules calmly drinks coffee and says that he does not need a tax system that cannot properly collect taxes, so it needs to be abolished. Everyone is silent and looks at each other. Kroll looks and thinks it's amazing. These noisy bureaucrats are now silent and can't say anything. Hercules turns to Kroll and apologizes for asking many times, but he asks to tell them how the trade tax is collected. He says that the merchant's tax rate is calculated based on his profit and the type of goods. Hercules asks Kroll how he will find out the exact amount of his sales income. He replies that from his words. Hercules shouts again that this is it, that is, here again you can just lie. Poor Kroll is barely holding on. Hercules says that traders are free to falsify figures. It is true that the tax levied on trade provides significant income. They have to pay what they earn as a national obligation. Hercules says that's why he's not going to change the trade taxation policy. But given the labor, time, and manpower, they can't afford to do an unannounced inspection, so it needs to be reviewed. Hercules begins to look further. He reads out that the import tax, which only hinders the flow of goods, bringing only a small income to the treasury. Next comes the tax on the release of servants. In their days, servants are no longer exempt. Why did they still have this dusty taxation system? Hercules says that both will be abolished. Kroll thinks that 4 tax systems were abolished or sent for revision in the blink of an eye. Hercules looks at the list, and they finally come to the salt monopoly. Everyone immediately tenses up. Hercules says that this policy, which was adopted during the reign of the late Emperor Hadrian, helped the empire to secure a new source of income. And what the empire could not collect with a poll tax was offset by the sale of salt, selling for 30 times its normal value. Hercules says that salt is necessary for people, so they bought it regardless of the cost, but he found something here. Then the priest comes up from behind with a tray containing a bag. All the bourgeoisie are watching in panic and horror, realizing what it is. Kroll looks at it and doesn't understand what it is. Hercules calls Caroline to him and asks her to taste her. She tries it. Hercules asks her how it is. She replies that it is just ordinary salt. She believes that it is better and cheaper than monopolized salt. Hercules says that this illegal salt is much better than the monopolized salt of the empire. Moreover, it is sold throughout the imperial table at a fairly cheap price. He says the fact that this salt is being sold on the streets means that there is someone quietly pulling the strings behind him. All politicians hide their faces and their eyes. Hercules addresses all the guys and menacingly asks if they are not laughing at his father's tax system. Everyone starts sweating from tension and fear. They all look down with their heads down. At this point, Caroline's father defiantly draws his sword. Hercules asks if everyone here is buying the monopolized salt of the empire. Kroll panics and does not understand the reaction of the bureaucrats. He thinks that this cannot be. Are they really all buying contraband salt? There is a dead silence. Hercules smiles broadly and begs everyone's forgiveness. Everyone abruptly raises their heads and looks at him in shock, mixed with bewilderment. Hercules says that it is obvious that this system is unstable and bad in all its senses, because it was invented only to compensate for the broken tax system, so they are also canceling it. They all stare at him in horror. Hercules adds that he is also ready to turn a blind eye to the issue of smuggled salt. Everyone starts listening to him with great interest and twitches. Hercules adds that it will be on only one condition. Everyone starts thinking out loud about what the condition is. Hercules says that the merchants should form a trade union. Everyone looks at questioningly, and Kroll begins to reflect. Hercules says that when using traditional methods for merchants, it is obvious that they falsify the amount of income, and it is impossible to track what exactly they are doing. If they formed a trade union, the number of people who would have to check income would be reduced, and they could carry out cross-control between unions and merchants, and between other unions. This would allow the government to gain some degree of control over the economy with the help of trade unions. Someone says that there are concerns that if a trade union is formed, it will lead to higher prices if they set the price for one thing. Doesn't he think that this will encourage others to raise prices so that they can also make a profit? One says that many of them here believe that trading is a vile business, that money is earned not by simple buying and selling, but by thinking and thinking. Hercules is outraged at how he even earns a living with such an idea. Hercules says that if there are not so many buyers, then they just need to unite merchants to figure out how to sell them. If just suddenly raise the price of anything, no one will buy it and it will rot. He adds that they also know that the merchants have formed their own union, albeit unofficially, so he suggests using it to their advantage. He addresses them like gentlemen, snaps his finger and says that he has invented a new tax system and would like them to contribute. My uncle is handing out leaflets to everyone. Hercules says that there are no emperors or bureaucrats here right now. They are just a collection of people who want to restore the Lemurian Empire and those who can do it. Hercules tells everyone not to hesitate to challenge his decision. Everyone is intensely reading the documents and just keeping silent. Hercules sees their reaction and says that he actually believes that they receive too little. So if they successfully implement fiscal reforms, he will personally make sure that their salaries are fair. Hercules smiles and suggests that everyone try hard together. Everyone starts actively thinking and saying that they would like to ask something. There are questions, and they would just like to discuss it in detail with motivation. Thus, a heated debate began in the meeting room, which lasted for 3 days and nights. And as a result, after numerous improvements and adjustments, a new taxation system was finally created, which was made public throughout the empire. And 2 years later, after the new taxation system was unveiled, the empire's tax revenues increased by about 1.5 times compared to 2 years earlier. And the use of taxes, such as the staff costs of the imperial palace, has been revised to reduce the costs of the national treasury. In addition, all the treasures that were part of the property of the imperial house and did not represent historical value were evenly sold. Thus, the treasury of the Lemurian Empire began to recover safely, and the new emperor, Hercules, at the age of 14, received firm support from merchants supporting national logistics. Caroline tells that this is great. She believes that he will really be able to solve the financial problems of the empire in less than 3 years. Hercules proudly says that he knows this, so why doesn't she pat him on the head? She happily holds out her hand and agrees to it. And then he blushes sharply, turns away, and gets nervous. She turns to him and asks if he is sure that he wants to go out into the city. If they go to such a crowded place, it will surely cause a noise. Hercules replies that everything is fine, because for Caroline, he is still the same Hercules as he always was, and in the eyes of the rest of the world, he is not who they take him for. Caroline turns to him and asks if he used some kind of magic. She replies that, in any case, she makes a reservation and asks if he is not going to leave the castle disguised with magic and skip his official duties. He replies that Christopher and the others will take care of it. He holds out his hand to her and says that today he wants to introduce Caroline to 4 Lemurian landmarks. She looks at him in surprise and blushes. They come to the museum. Hercules says that this is the first attraction he wanted to show her. Carlina is surprised and says that there are so many art objects here. She asks what kind of place it is. Hercules proudly replies that he built it. She is shocked. He asks if she remembers when they opened the warehouse during the financial control. He says that at that time he was going to sell some surplus works of art to replenish the treasury, but there were many things with high historical value and things that were too wasteful to sell. He would have been cursed, as he believes, if he had sold them. He says there were so many of them that they decided to put them on display here. She listens to him attentively and looks around. She stops at an item and asks if this vase was stored in a national warehouse. Hercules replies that this is the private property of an aristocrat. It was originally planned to exhibit only art objects from the castle, but the aristocrats insisted that they also want to show their wealth. Hercules says with a grin that they will charge them for a place, and visitors will be charged an entrance fee. In this way, they will earn a lot of money. Hercules does not see any reaction from Caroline. He is outraged and looks at it, thinking that this is not the reaction he expected. Then the she-devil appears and says that this is true, because women are not interested in male bragging. Hercules menacingly tells her to stop appearing out of the blue. She replies that she is just giving him advice. She says that Carlina knows how to think like all people. It seems that she has not yet grown up to love art. She asks if he should use something simpler. Hercules listens and begins to think about other options. Hercules decides to go to the next place. He says that the next attraction is the street market. He used to come here often. Everyone is working hard, selling bread, washing things, separating grains from everything else. Caroline goes and speaks with surprise that it is so lively here. She has never been to such a place before. Hercules says that since the days when Lemuria was the capital of 2/3 of the world's wealth, there are still always a lot of different goods on the shelves here. In fact, since they had nothing to attract people with, they decided to build a museum right next to the market. But on the other hand, this way, they attract people to go to the market and buy different goods. He tells her that there are also artisans here, so they can even make a souvenir with her name and date on it, even though it is not a currency. Carlina is genuinely surprised and happy. She goes and says that it turns out that this place has become so lively thanks to Hercules, who agrees. He takes something, hands it to her, and asks what about it. It's the beads Caroline is looking at. Hercules says out loud that Caroline's eyes are like rubies, and then says that they are even more beautiful than rubies. She blushes and says he's flattering her. The guy says that if she likes something, let him know. He will buy it for her. She refuses and says it's too much. Then she says with embarrassment that she doesn't need to. Ever since she was born into the Gallianos family, her father, a military man, taught her only martial arts in order to protect Hercules. She smiles and says she's sure she wouldn't look good with any of these necklaces if he gave it to her. Hercules then asks if that means she doesn't want a reward from the emperor. There is an awkward silence. She says in a panic that this is not what she wanted to say. Hercules laughs and asks why she doesn't just accept it. He just wants to give it to her. He says that Carolina is very beautiful, she will look good in anything. She blushes even more. She turns away and asks him not to tease her again. He thinks proudly and with a grin that this is exactly what he wants. Carolina turns around and looks at the table with decorations. She notices one necklace with a large dark stone. Hercules notices her reaction and asks if she likes something. She leaves and says it's not like that. She doesn't like anything here. Hercules reflects that, given the way things are going, it is probably not worth showing an aqueduct under construction, a bridge structure with a channel for supplying water through a ravine or river. He reflects and understands what needs to be done. They look at how horses race in competitions. Caroline's face is full of childish joy. She enjoys the chariot race. She really wanted to visit here. Hercules says that he just thought that Caroline might like chariot racing. She happily agrees and says that everyone likes it. She says that chariot racing is a test of the bond of trust between rider and horse against horse, man against man, in a heated battle for speed. Caroline says with confidence that there is no one who would not like it. She enthusiastically says that the red comet, Shinoda's Quadriga, is especially cool. He is a very popular jockey who has won many races since his debut. Hercules briefly replies that he understands. As a result, all the heroes of the race say goodbye to the audience. Caroline says with a sigh that today's race is over. Suddenly, all the musicians start playing the trumpet, making a sound. She turns her head and sees her father holding a handkerchief high and then epically lowering it. Suddenly, people with horses enter the arena again at a great furious speed. Caroline looks at it all in shock. She doesn't understand what's going on. They decided to hold 2 races from the very beginning. She thought there was only one gate. Hercules says that they added more gates when they rebuilt the stadium. Caroline listens to him admiringly. He says that this stadium has been experiencing financial difficulties for a long time and still suffered from a lack of maintenance, so they decided to rebuild it according to a new project. Hercules complacently says that it is ultimately cheaper to rebuild it than to repair it. She interrupts him and shouts to him that he is in front of him, the red comet, Shinoda's. Hercules stands in silence, and she screams that she cannot believe that she sees him in person. He reflects that if only he knew a little more about what he did. He looks at a happy Caroline and then smiles himself, thinking that it's actually good too. They leave the stadium. Carolina jumps joyfully and says that it was so great. She can't believe that he went for it at the last minute. The Red Comet has fully justified his name for her. Hercules regretfully tells her that she completely forgot about him in the middle of the race. She bows to him and asks him to excuse her, saying that she is very sorry. Hercules walks past her and says he knows it's late, but would she like to take a walk to the last place? She follows him and asks where to go. Hercules turns to her and replies with a grin that they will go to the sea. Caroline's face begins to darken. Hercules doesn't understand what's going on. Isn't the sea a classic place for walking and dating? She replies that she has never heard of such a thing. She says that the sea is the place where the sewage of Lemuria ends. It's the worst place you can go, and it stinks, and it's dirty, and it's just disgusting. Hercules understands that such places for dating were chosen in that world. He smiles and tells her that everything is fine. She keeps refusing. He pushes her and tells her that everything is fine. She doesn't give in and resist. When they come to the sea, he informs her about it, and she slowly opens her eyes. She looks down at the spacious sea reflecting the rays of the sun. She looks at it all in fascination. She looks around and is surprised to say that there is no garbage here at all, and the water is so clean and does not stink. The harbor used to be full of fish waste, but now it's so clean. Hercules says it's all thanks to the law. He says that until now, all the sewage and garbage of New Lemuria was dumped into the sea, which is why the harbor was very dirty, and sometimes it caused epidemics. He says that's why he built it to fix this situation. He points to the building and immediately says that it is a sewage treatment plant. He explains that it allows all wastewater in New Lemuria to pass through a series of filters before being discharged into the sea. He says that there is also now a law against littering. He says that he is going to create a new position that will be responsible for garbage collection and cleaning. And in order not to litter the territory near the capital, he decided to throw all the garbage somewhere away from the capital. Carolina says she can't believe that he went to all this trouble and came up with a law to remove all the garbage. Is it really so necessary? Hercules comes up to him and says that he needs it. He pulls her to him and kisses her on the forehead. He smiles and says that since he's going on a date with someone he likes, it would be nice if the streets were clean. She starts to blush and gets hot. He stretches his hands to her neck, puts on a necklace, and says that this blue stone looks good against her red hair. She is surprised and says that it is the same necklace. He replies that he thought she liked it when he was watching. He tells Caroline that it suits her. She pauses at first and then thanks him with a big smile. They stand for a long time without unnecessary movements, as if Hercules is waiting for something. After a pause, he openly says that he wants her to do it too. She looks at her in panic, and he says that he wants her to kiss him on the cheek as a sign of gratitude. He says that until today, he has worked very hard. Thanks to his policy, the sea has become so beautiful. He reminds her that she said she would do anything he asked. Hercules sees her reaction. He starts to wonder. He didn't want to ask too much, but isn't it too early for Caroline to ask to kiss him? She snuggles up to him, kisses him on the cheek, and says that he did a very good job. Hercules is also starting to blush. She pulls away from him, and he thanks her. The she-devil appears and says how hot it has become here. Hercules tells her to shut up. Caroline doesn't understand his reaction. At this time, someone in the castle suspiciously says that he does not see here today. The other replies that he has a date with Lady Caroline today. The uncle and the priest are surprised. The priest says with a heavy voice that it's nice to be interested in a girl. Christopher says he doesn't feel comfortable when she says that. Uncle says that, who at first did not show any initiative in his duties and was idle, worked very hard until today, so this is normal, in his opinion. He just wanted to take a break from everything. He says with great tension and excitement, looking through all the documents, that war may soon begin. They go in a panic and say that there was some strange activity on the Persona Peninsula. There's no hard evidence at the moment, but they can't just leave it as it is. Something needs to be done before things take a problematic turn. We need to discuss everything with... Uncle says that we will go to him first. Christopher says that he only gets in the way, calling him a smartass. They come in at the same time and ask if they can take up some of his time. They see the following picture in front of them. Hercules is lying on Caroline's lap and reading books, and she asks if it would be more convenient to read in a sitting position. Caroline gets scared when she sees her father, and the two of them shout in shock too. Hercules does not react in any way. After the discussion, Hercules, still on Caroline's lap, asks if they really want to expand their troops. One says that you should start with the naval forces, the other says that you should pay attention to the army first. They look at each other angrily. Hercules defiantly tells Caroline that these old men scare him, and she assures him that she is here with him. Hercules stands up and says that last year, most of their increased profits were spent on state-owned enterprises. Water irrigation, reconstruction of military routes, aqueducts, public health promotion, and so on. If they do not strengthen the foundation of the state, it will simply be impossible to expand the army. He says that the morale of the population should be appropriate, but he himself planned to increase the military budget at the beginning of the year. Citizens should be ready to fight for their beautiful and comfortable country. Hercules says that he planned everything. However, the army of this country is too weak and incredibly disorganized for restructuring. Those two look at him in fright. Hercules says that regardless of the differences between the races that are bound by the peace treaty, they can simply ignore and slowly start raising funds themselves. He understands that they need to strengthen their military forces, but their army is absolutely super weak. His uncle says that even despite his words, they noticed a strange movement in the outskirts. Hercules asks them if they are really talking about the Personia Peninsula. He already knows. He says that suspicious and unregistered transactions of wheat and iron guilds have already been confirmed. In addition, consumers of merchants and intermediaries everywhere report an abnormal increase in the number of mercenaries who come to them. And when Hercules traced the sources of all these changes, he realized that they were all related to the Personia Peninsula. He says that those guys from Personia, he's even willing to bet that they think that as long as some child occupies the throne, they will smash them. They have no idea about personal conflicts and consider it vain. Hercules leans back on the sofa and says that it is obvious that sooner or later they will be attacked. In fact, expanding this weak army will be a waste of money. He sighs and says how difficult it is. Carolina listens to him and addresses him. She says if the army of the Lemurian Empire gets stronger, she will reward him. Then, Hercules immediately stands up and tells Galfes and Christopher to act and immediately sets up a strategic conference. Christopher thinks how easy it is. Galfes listens to him and thinks that this is as expected from his daughter. Hercules tells everyone that they have money left after the financial reform. At the moment, the army of the Lemurian Empire has about 20,000 heavy cavalry and longbow archers in total, with about 100 warships. The time has come to consider declaring war to seize lands lost under the previous rule. Hercules asks Galfesa how much more precisely they need reinforcements. He thoughtfully replies about this that he would like to say that they still have enough cavalry, but he does not feel calm for them either. He replies that there are at least 10,000 infantrymen, but if he could ask for more, then 20,000. Hercules tells him not to ask for more, they can't afford it. Galfes sits sullenly, believing that it is hopeless. Hercules turns to Christopher and asks what's going on with the fleet. He replies that he is still satisfied with the state of the naval forces, but many ships are already at their limit, and they should be rebuilt. So if they cut the cost of the army, the control over the sea will increase significantly. Hercules asks if he means to maintain the status quo. Galfes tells that they have not had naval battles for almost 20 years, and now they need an army. Christopher is outraged and asks what he's talking about. He shouts that if they lose control of the sea, they will not be able to defend the imperial capital. He tells that the fleet is more necessary. Galfes refuses and asks to strengthen the army. There is no need to bother with parasites. Hercules listens to them and reflects that their quarrel is not unfounded, because their troops really should be given a little more attention and money. The military forces of the Lemurian Empire are divided into two parts: an army led by Galfes and a fleet commanded by Christopher. Initially, Lemuria had a permanent army of 100,000 infantry. The cavalry was replenished with recruits or mercenaries from allied tribes. The main army was well-trained and quickly adapted to any battlefield, which was followed by an impetus to the direction of the expansion of the lands of the Lemurian Empire. When the previous emperor, Hadrian III, reigned, its number decreased significantly. It turned out that he destroyed all the infantry and formed an army based on heavy cavalry and archers, who were less flexible but effectively used in battle. Hercules thinks it was a wise decision to reorganize the army, using these soldiers as a sensitive substitute for the horse troops. During this period, the soldiers consisted of half peasants and half mercenaries from the allied tribes. And while there are poorly equipped men in his army who were holding their own yesterday, it is simply impossible to win. Adrian III continued to lose people, and while they did not have a chance to improve their capabilities, the number of lost battles grew. Money continued to go to waste due to purchases of expensive horses and armor, and soon the Lemurian Empire was mired in financial problems. That's how the state of the state's finances has come to the current difficult situation, which is why Golfis and Christopher are arguing and swearing. Caroline turns to and asks if drawing up the main army is difficult, then why don't they bring in mercenaries? Hercules thinks about it and comes to the conclusion that it will be difficult with them. Mercenaries are soldiers who live for money. Even the Habsburgs from Spain, who own colonies in South America and have made a fortune with the help of huge farms and silver mines, have completely drained the country's budget in order to maintain the higher division of the Third. Because of this, and also because of the lack of a regular army, some of them were betrayed and given a sad experience. Niccolo Machiavelli says he is against an army of foreign mercenaries because they cannot be trusted. Hercules reflects that Tertia has gone from an army of mercenaries to a regular army, so they are different from the French reinforcements who betrayed Machiavelli. However, you might as well give the example of a Swiss mercenary who fought for France until his death. Another example is the French national wars, so it is impossible to confirm the evil intentions of the mercenaries, as did Machiavelli. Hercules reflects that Machiavelli forced the mercenaries to go through a lot of difficulties. Probably about a third of the kingdom's theories were based on personal reasons. Machiavelli himself did not stand out for military qualities. He starts saying that, given how weak their army is, hiring mercenaries will only add fuel to the fire. He thinks it's worth focusing on strengthening the main army. Golfis agrees and says he's right, they won't rely on mercenaries. Golfis says that most of the mercenaries from the Navy can't even ride horses, which annoys Christopher. Christopher, in turn, says that their ships are flimsy. They were mistreated by the brutes of their army, so now they will have to rebuild them. They start swearing and shouting at each other again. Hercules says that if they don't stop fighting immediately, he will force them to kiss each other as an order from the emperor. Everyone abruptly stops talking and sits down. Hercules says it's great and calls them good boys. Hercules says that they do not refuse the fleet. If they lose control, it will be difficult to restore it, so let them hurry up with the construction of ships. Christopher thanks. He continues to say that as for the army, it will be impossible to add another 10,000 cavalry, but he will be able to find about 3,000 soldiers. He asks Golfis if that's enough. Golfis says that it turns out that the problem lies in the 30,000th army of non-commissioned officers of the regular army. He asks if this is exactly normal. He replies that if there are only 30,000 soldiers, then yes, because there are always a certain number of junior officers. Hercules says that then he leaves it to him, Golfis. He obeys and replies that it will be as he wishes. Christopher suggests dealing with those guys from Personia. Golfis adds that they are a bit problematic. The Personia mercenary corps rebelled against their master, the emperor, 8 years ago. They are traitors who rebelled and robbed the Persona Peninsula. They knew that the ruler was too concerned about the slow, heavy cavalry and would not be able to withstand the light infantry. He thinks they will use the same tactics. Caroline asks Hercules if he really means that they will invade their territory again. He replies that this is not the case. Most likely, their scheme is aimed at making the young emperor suffer and stealing the finances of the state, because they themselves seem to be in a state of financial poverty. Hercules has heard that the farmers of the Personia Peninsula suffer a lot from toxins. Christopher and Golfis begin to understand who the enemy is here. Hercules says it looks like it's all him. In person in the castle, while someone was cleaning, a certain beastman with ears comes in. He sees a woman and growls. He grabs her sharply, instilling fear, and says that there is nothing to be afraid of because he is the king of this place. In another place, the same man asks a subordinate how many soldiers they have gathered. He is told that, in addition to the 10,000 mercenaries, which include 5,000 infantry and 5,000 crossbowmen, they have gathered 30,000 infantry and 5,000 light cavalry from various tribes. The man, hugging the girl, says that this means that they have 45,000 soldiers in total. He grins and says, it's not bad. At this time, Hercules says that the commander of the Personia mercenaries is a Black Panther named Dalios. A priest is walking in the castle with a lot of documents in her hands, looks out into the street and sees Caroline and Hercules training. She says they fight with all their might whenever she looks at them. Christopher gives Hercules the documents and says that this is the state of the formation of the army and the schedule of ship designs. He asks him when the war will start. Hercules replies that, given the influx of wheat and iron in person, they will soon begin to move in. They have also begun to gather soldiers. They will definitely take a lot of time to prepare for war. He says their soldiers are well trained, but they need to rebuild the ships and assemble as many soldiers as possible. He suggests making sure that everything is well prepared. After the strategic military meeting, all the military and artisans of the Lemurian fortress were warned, and they began to carry out their duties. In the harbor, the ships are rapidly sailing away. Christopher is told that they have gathered all the galleys. He is carefully examining everything. He points to the ship and says that the sailboats are moving quite slowly, so they should try to sharpen the masts a little and speed up the experience. After all, in a real battle, the ship will be weighted with armor and weapons. They need to mobilize everything they can. In addition, the rowers on the right side row too much harder than the others. The ship can turn around. If left alone, it can hit the allied ships. It can quickly deal with these shortcomings. They obey him. Moving to the training ground, you can see how actively the training is going on. Everyone is beaten in turn. Galfis asks them, well, what is it? Are they really scared just because of this? He is furious and shouts not to even dream of defending the empire with such forces. Their enemy is the barbarians who stole the lands of their country. Will they really continue to be afraid and retreat? He tells everyone to pretend that he is a general of the enemy army and to attack with the intention of killing. He will not let them go home until they defeat him. Before the war to restore the lands lost by Personia, everyone gave their best in preparation. To raise the soldiers' morale and strength, Hercules is currently training with Caroline. They are fighting. Hercules says that this is what is expected of a daughter from a family of honored knights. He cannot find a single gap in her defense. He calls Caroline the supreme knight. Carolina makes a sharp swing with her sword. He jumps back. Carolina says that this trick will not make him lose his vigilance. She says, pointing her sword at him, that the knight always behaves calmly. Excitement can cost him his life. He smiles and tells her that she is right. After all, she is the daughter of Gallianos Galfis. Then he asks, how about this? He abruptly pushes off the wall, uses innate magic and body enhancement. Caroline defends herself with her sword. There is fear in her eyes. Hercules deprives her of her sword with one blow, breaking it into pieces. Hercules, with a grin, asks her what she will do now. Caroline uses her innate magic at the moment of attack, namely extreme speed. She abruptly finds herself right in the face of Hercules, who is frightened. She abruptly grabs his clothes and pulls him down. Hercules opens his eyes and groans in pain. Caroline tells him not to be too sure just because he broke her sword. He smiles awkwardly and says several times that he has lost. He offers to end for today, says that he is not her equal. She screams that it's not true and that he was great too. She thinks he definitely has a talent for fencing. He replies that he can do just as much as an ordinary person. He thinks he can't get better. Caroline says that if he uses the connection with the spirit they have a contract with, then even she will not be able to resist him. Elves have 3 unique abilities: witchcraft, magic, and spiritual art. Witchcraft is a kind of gift that allows you to deeply understand the world and interfere with its structure. It is in great demand in medicine, manufacturing, and siege battles. It was thanks to witchcraft that they were able to build sewage treatment plants in such a short time. Magic may seem similar to witchcraft, but its essence is completely different. Unlike witchcraft, which is not intended for combat due to activation restrictions such as calculation and pronunciation, magic is often used during battles without restrictions. However, no matter how much effort a person puts into teaching and practice, not all are compatible with magic. Magic can be divided into 3 main parts. Innate magic is the magic that he receives at birth. For example, the extreme speed that Caroline possesses, this magic increases the speed of the body several times. Bloodline magic that he can only obtain through his bloodline. The Gallianos family and their unusual My Sword was made for the Emperor fit this category. Everything they pick up turns into a top-class weapon. Even an ordinary fork can pierce anything. Hereditary magic is a type of magic inherited from person to person. The emperor who belongs to him is a good example of magic passed down from generation to generation by the emperors of Lemuria, the main sign of the emperor's successor. Using it, Hercules can gain psychological advantages over other elves, which played a huge role in discussing financial reform with the nobles. And finally, spiritual art. This technique allows you to make contracts with spirits for their help. Spirits represent the will and power of nature, and through a contractual relationship, a person can use their power in spiritual arts. Anyone who has signed a contract with a spirit can do this, so there are many values. Spirits that can predict the weather are often found in rural areas. Since it is a contract that is concluded, you have to pay for the work of the spirits. The disadvantage is that every time he uses the power of the spirit, he has to pay him. In his contract, the condition is the source of magical power. Hercules answers Caroline's question that his spirit will not help much in battle. He smiles and asks her if it's important. He feels relieved because Caroline wasn't hurt. She wants to object. Here, Hercules looks at her with a grin and offers to return to the room, and before Tim asks if she will help him get up. She holds out her hand, and Hercules abruptly pulls her towards him. She falls to him, and he joyfully says that she has relaxed her vigilance. She panics and tries to escape. She says she thought they had finished training. He asks her what's the matter, she blushed so much. He asks her if now is not the time to use extreme speed. She says that if she uses her in her current position, he will simply be blown away, and he does not want this. Hercules asks if she is trying to behave calmly. He moans ostentatiously and says that it looks like his arms are tired from training. He starts falling down. She asks him to stop, saying it's not fair. Hercules smiles and thinks that she is so easily embarrassed. He gently strokes Caroline's head, brushing away her bangs. She closes her eyes. Her cheeks redden even more. Her lips tremble. Hercules looks at her in surprise. He pays attention to her pendant. He thinks that she is still wearing the pendant that he bought her back then. He reaches down and holds her hands, trying to touch her lips. Then he hears the words above from the priest, who calls it a carefree youth. Hercules angrily asks her what she wants, and she smiles, laughs, and jokingly asks them for forgiveness. She reported that Titus was calling him. Titus is the brother of Hercules. Titus sits in his workshop and complains about how problematic it all is. He pokes out the sculpture and is outraged that he has already spent 10 whole minutes waiting for his younger brother. He asks if he needs to show a little more respect for his own older brother. Titus addresses Hercules and says that he knows that he cannot concentrate on his work while waiting. He says that while he creates masterpieces, people like him, who are not immersed in art, do nothing but flirt with girls. He shouts indignantly that it is a huge mistake if Hercules thinks that he works the same way as other people. Hercules covers his ears and tells Titus that he is to blame. Hercules tells him that he is reserving a good place for his next exhibition. Titus's ears immediately twitch. Titus immediately calms down and says that is a very powerful man, he is magnificent, and calls him his dear younger brother. Hercules thinks to himself that how is it possible that such a simpleton even exists in this world? Titus asks Hercules to sit down while he makes coffee. Hercules obeys and goes to a chair. Titus stops him and asks him not to sit in this chair because it is unique, doesn't understand him. He says that they call him the cursed chair. It was the favorite chair of a man who was executed for serial murder. And as soon as he sits down, the restless spirit of this man will kill him. At least, that's what Titus was told. Titus proudly says that this chair has caused the death of more than 50 people, because it's terrifying. Hercules asks him how about hanging it on the ceiling instead of gatherings. He happily agrees and offers to put it on display. Titus is the second son of the Adrian family. Regarding art, their points of view coincide, so they often talk, despite the fact that he is only an amateur. And even though he, the younger brother, ascended to the throne, their relationship has not changed. He turns to Titus and asks how His Highness Adrian is doing. He replies that he still does not go out into the world. He thinks that he cannot get used to the fact that he did not receive the crown. Hercules asks him if he can just give it to him. Titus replies that he would not advise it. If he gives him the crown, then the state will come to an end. Hercules asks Titus, but he does not need a crown. He asks to stop joking and says he doesn't need to. He says that Hercules has created a place for exhibitions, which is called an art gallery museum, and also discovered coffee, which gives a cheerful state for several hours. He simply does not have time to be an emperor. Titus says with great desire that when he is done with the sculpture, He will need to paint several paintings, and after that he will also make decorations for the concert next month. He has so much inspiration that he does not have enough hands. He decides that he needs to clone himself. Hercules says that he is just like a Huaizan. He does not understand who it is, and Hercules asks to forget about it, because it's just thinking out loud. He says that he actually hoped that Adrian would take the throne. Before they drifted apart, he wished him a good day, but he just looked at him angrily. He thinks he definitely hates him. Titus tells Hercules that he simply cannot handle this problem. He was his father's first child, and then his upbringing was unsuccessful. He hands the coffee to Hercules and says that even if he cares, he won't solve this problem. Hercules has two older brothers, the second son of the family, Titus, and the third, Adrian. As you might have guessed, Adrian was named after his father, and if he had ascended the throne, he would have been called Adrian the Fourth. Titus says that his father wanted to make his first child an heir. Perhaps this name was given to him with the hope of fulfilling his father's dreams. However, the father was wrong in his way of loving. He spoiled Adrian. He became selfish and turned away from society. As far as Hercules knows, he did not use his powers for good, attacked the neighboring children of aristocrats, and dealt cruelly with them. And every time his father bowed to the victims and their families to hush up the case, it was all just so that his child would inherit the title of emperor. Titus says that once upon a time he tore his painting to dust. Hercules says that since they are fighting, they must have quarreled with him. Titus replies that they did not quarrel. Titus begins to tremble with anger and says that he had a fight with his father when he said that he shouldn't have drawn in front of Adrian. That day he learned a new word, baselessness. Hercules looks at him and thinks to himself that he looks like a corpse. Titus says that his father is to blame for his character. He thinks that he just hoped that it would pass over time, but it did not happen. 14 years ago, he attacked 4 noble children, and the whole empire was rocked by unrest. Adrian was calm, thinking that his father would come up with something, but in the end, his father gave up. Titus asks Hercules if he knew that his father was an eerily single-minded man. He asks if this is really true. He says that after that incident, he approached him for the first time, looked at his scribbles, and said that apparently Titus was useless too and never came back. Hercules asks if he really began to hate his father then. He says the first son is useless, just like the second. Military operations are unfolding, the political situation is also unclear, and when the father was cornered, another son was born. And it was Hercules. He was born at the perfect time, and moreover, from childhood he coped with everyone perfectly. For his father, he was a real miracle. And since then, he has devoted all his love to him and completely forgot about Adrian, which is why he hates Hercules. Titus says that's it, a happy ending. Hercules is outraged that there is so much happiness here. It is very problematic. Hercules says that, plus, his father is terrible at raising children. Titus says that this is not the case at all, because he is the result of his success. He avoided all the mistakes made by the first and second sons. Heirs of royal families, real creations achieved by the bitter experience of previously born children. If a masterpiece had been born from the very beginning, no one would have had to suffer, and, in fact, solved the problem of the financial crisis. And he also managed to build such a social infrastructure as a sewer cleaner. He sips his coffee and thanks Titus, looking away. Titus asks Hercules when they will get rid of Adrian, because no one knows when his older brother with a thirst for power will behead him. Hercules replies that he is not going to do this. As long as he is quiet, he will not touch him either. He is surprised that Titus is so excited about this. Titus asks Hercules if he really thinks that his brother will be inactive, whether it will be a problem if he contacts the non-elven aristocracy. Hercules is silent, and then tells Titus that he knows absolutely nothing about politics. He asks him what he thinks they will do. Hercules argues out loud that it is impossible that they will start to rebel. The movement of goods and people is simply tracked through guilds, and an attack is even more impossible. No killer will break through Carolina's security. He smiles suspiciously and says that if he does commit murder, he could easily be arrested or killed for a variety of reasons. Titus asks who else is worried because Hercules is saying scary things. Hercules remembers something about Caroline. He asks Titus if he has finished the thing he asked him to do. He also remembers and says that it was precisely because of this that he called him. He drags and puts a suitcase in front of him. He opens it with interest and smiles when he sees the result. He praises and says that, as expected of him, he is perfect. Titus says he's glad to hear that. He asks Hercules where he just got this design. He says he made the size exactly as he asks, "Is everything okay?" Hercules replies that everything looks cool. Titus asks if he wasn't going to hand it over to Miss Caroline when the military reform was successful, but he said he couldn't do it until the result was clear. There are people knocking on their door, and Titus lets them in. This is Christopher and Galphus apologizing for bothering the brothers. Galphus says that the training of an additional 30,000 infantrymen and junior officers is allowed. Christopher says that the fleet has also been rebuilt, and the maximum number of ships in operation has been reached. Titus wants to guess what this means. Hercules gets up and says that they will regain the Personia Peninsula, and from that moment, the war will begin. The territory of Personia is a land based on the territory of the Empire of Lemuria. Their main income came from exporting products such as grapes, olives, and marble, but it was obvious that this would not be enough to continue hiring roughly 10,000 mercenaries. 8 years ago, when His Highness Hercules was 4 years old, a mercenary broke into them because his predecessor, His Highness Adrian III, stopped paying the money agreed in the contract with the mercenaries. To suppress the uprising, he took command of the troops and started a war, but he was defeated by the army under the command of Dalios. Peace was eventually established, but they had to sacrifice the Personia Peninsula. Since then, the Personia Peninsula has functioned as a de facto state and was ruled by mercenaries. At this time, everyone in Personia Bay is quietly relaxing, chatting, and drinking. One of them says with pleasure, "What a wonderful night." However, he chokes on his drink due to sharp knocks from the street. This gives a signal that someone is invading. In a panic, everyone tells each other to go to their places quickly. Everyone needs to get ready. They go out and look into the open sea and are horrified by what they see. Numerous ships are rapidly sailing towards them, closing the swim in width. At this time, tyranny reigns in Personia itself. Poor residents sit in the streets almost unconscious, begging soldiers to spare them. But Dalios' soldier rudely and abruptly pushes them away. At this time, in the Dalios castle, an excellently prepared meal stands in front of him: stewed meat, rolls, snacks. Dalios reads the appeal document and realizes that he is being asked to lower taxes. He says that this country is full of poor people. He says that even though he freed Lemuria from control, they ended up wasting all the money. He arrogantly asks what they would do without him at all. He throws the paper aside and starts drinking again. He says that at least the wine is delicious and the food is better than in Lemuria. A subordinate addresses him and says that they have detected movement from the Lemurian Empire. Most likely they are preparing for an invasion. He smiles and says that he already knows. When asked if he really wants to start attacking Lemuria, he replies that they have nothing to fear. He says that their enemy is a 15-year-old boy who has never experienced wars. Moreover, he is the offspring of His Highness Adrian III. He is sure that he has taken after his father and will go to pray to the gods or do something similar to win. He says that in the end, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He asks how they got the idea to make this first war memorable for him. Then the soldier abruptly enters and shouts to the commander that they have bad news. Dalios abruptly takes him by the head and slams him into the table out of rage. He says menacingly that he distracted him by rushing in like that. Now he won't be able to eat properly. The soldier is trembling and bleeding. He tells the commander that he is very sorry, but they have received a letter informing them that the Empire's army has entered their territory. Everyone looks at each other in horror. Dalios freezes in place at first, and then he breaks in to the others and asks what's going on. The soldiers tell the commander that they decided to attack unexpectedly. He rudely replies that he has already understood this, so where did the invasion start from? He is told that it started from the bay, so the Bay of Personia fell under the onslaught of the army of the Lemurian Empire. Dalios begins to tremble with rage. He sighs and says that it is clear to him. He calls Hercules a rat. He realizes that he knew that Personia did not have ships, that they were preparing for a land attack turned out badly. If they had at least one ship, they would have delayed them until the troops landed. His subordinates tell him that then the soldiers should be called immediately. He again rudely replies that he knows this. He says that if they are in Personia Bay now, then they can only go further to 2 places, either to the fortress where he is located or to the capital. He is now in the fortress, but they will have to travel quite a long way to get here. Walking long distances in heavy armor only lowers the physical strength of soldiers, and since he thinks more about strategy than His Highness Adrian III, he most likely will not make so many stupid moves in a surprise attack. and if he wants to stay in the black, he will definitely, according to Dalios' forecasts, head to the capital. He smiles and says that they still behaved so naively, thousands of mercenary infantrymen raised in such conditions since childhood, and in total 2,000 archers gathered here, plus they are surrounded by a high wall. He is sure that it will not fall so easily. He says that you need to counterattack them in front of the wall, and when they slow down, then everything will be over, in which case, not even much damage will be done. The panicked soldier calls the commander. The soldier says that the wall of the capital has fallen, they broke through. He looks in shock with his subordinate. He asks in horror what he just said, because his military training is perfect. Lemuria should not have had such a strong army. He replies that all this coincided with the riot in the capital. He wonders if the riot really happened at such a time. How is it even possible? Dalios begins to think hard about what could have gone wrong and comes to the conclusion that there really are traitors among them. The people on the street are in a panic. They are rioting and attacking the soldiers. People are shouting at them to flee this country. They won't let themselves be killed by taxes while they enjoy delicious food for their money. They are shouting to stop this pathetic resistance. They cannot allow the imperial army to continue successfully crushing them. They must calm down. Someone shouts at the other to shut up. They'd rather give these lands to Lemuria than live like this, so the soldiers should be getting out already. Soldiers are shouting at people to calm down immediately. Suddenly, someone kills the squad leader by sticking their sword into him. This man turns out to be his own soldier. He is followed by other soldiers who sink their swords into the commander. As soon as he dies, the soldier alone orders all the castle gates to be opened because the imperial army must enter. Hercules looks at all this from afar and laughs. He is sure that this panther said something like that. The apple does not fall far from the apple tree. He gloatingly says, well, what does it feel like to feel the bullseye pinching the tail? Christopher and Galphus Gallienus look and think. Apparently, he is very proud of himself. Carolina Gallienus tells His Highness Hercules that this invasion went pretty smoothly. How did he do that? Hercules proudly replies that everything is extremely simple. He shows the money sign and says it's all with this. Carolina Gallienus looks and does not understand if the money has really decided. He says that Dalios hired mercenaries who were raised in such conditions since childhood. These guys are very loyal to him, so if he tried to defeat them, they would take revenge. But there weren't enough dedicated mercenaries to protect the cities, so Dalios hired some more mercenaries from abroad. Therefore, at first they lured them to their side by paying twice as much. He was aware of his intentions 3 months ago. Galphus Gallienus looks at him and calls him a bribe taker. Who else is there to talk about loyalty? Hercules adds that he has already said that you should not trust mercenaries. And when Hercules sent several bribed mercenaries to the city, he started a riot among the townspeople with their help. Carolina Gallienus asks how they were able to do something like this at all, relying on the townspeople. Christopher replies that they were fed up with Dalios' tyranny from the very beginning, and their irritation grew day by day. Galphus Gallienus says that it would be possible to start an uprising with the help of those loyal mercenaries. They would have to be lured to their side for quite a long time, and now they have already opened the gates. Hercules says that in any case, the success of this invasion was clear 4 months ago. He goes to his comrades and says that, in his opinion, they are ready, so he offers to meet Dalios on the best battlefield. Galphus Gallienus looks at Hercules expectantly. Hercules asks if he really wanted to say something. He replies, in a panic, that it's nothing like that. He lowers his head and, after a silence, says that Hercules is taking command of the war for the first time. Until that moment, his orders were impeccable. But this success is like a miracle, and he thinks they should better defend this advantageous position, which they still hold. Hercules laughs and asks if the general of the imperial army is offering to resort to protection right in front of his daughter, if he is not behaving like a weakling now. Then Hercules, having embarrassed Galphus Gallienus, says confidently that they have every chance of winning. He says that the Personia Peninsula was the territory of the empire until the last 8 years. Based on the information he received from merchants, we can say that its geography has not changed much. Galphus Gallienus asks if these merchants were also bribed by Dalios. Hercules says he is so careful. Suddenly, he holds out a roll of paper and says that it is a map of the Personia Peninsula. He found it when he fell asleep in the castle library. After comparing it with the information of the merchants, everything almost matched. He points to the map and says that the day after tomorrow, Dalios will attack this town in order to retake it. He suggests starting an attack with archers, using this hill as a base. There is a river flowing from the other side of the hill, so they will only need to protect the front and rear. He tells Galfus Gallienus to give the soldiers time to dig trenches and defend themselves. This will be enough to compensate for the lack of soldiers. Hercules turns to Galfus Gallienus and tells him to calm down, assuring him that he is not like his father. Galfus Gallienus is surprised by this statement. Hercules says that when he was 4, his father brought him to the battlefield for the first time. Even then, he was wearing heavy armor. He says that after losing many fights, he learned many ways to escape and overheard his and his father's conflicts. Hercules says Dalios is terrible at running the country, but his record is 2 victories over the empire in a row. He can't win on his own. Hercules tells Galfus Gallienus that he will listen to his opinion and choose a strategy after discussing everything with him. He offers to witness this victory together. Galfus Gallienus looks at Hercules for a long time, then sits down on his knees in front of him and says, bowing his head, that he has grown a lot. Galfus Gallienus says to leave the victory in this war to him. He will deliver it to His Highness Hercules, no matter what the cost. Hercules says he's counting on him, calling Galfus Gallienus a raging fire. He replies that he understood him. A little later, Hercules sits by the window and reflects, the surprise attack in the bay and the capture of the capital. As Galfus Gallienus said, everything is going like clockwork. Dalios has probably panicked these few days. It will take the infantry 2 days to reach the city in the north, during which time they will have to finish all preparations. Christopher is also busy defending the bay. The war will begin in 2 days. Their army, which has doubled, will be in the black. Then the she-devil comes to him and asks, since he is awake, if he can help him. He responds without emotion that it is not necessary. At this time, panicked soldiers in Personia are preparing to defend themselves. Dalios on horseback tells everyone to move faster. He's not going to dance to Lemuria's tune anymore. Dalios is furious, saying over and over again that Hercules underestimated him, and he promises that he will kill him. Hercules is thinking hard about what step Dalios will take. The rule of triple attack, the attacking side needs 3 times as many people to defeat the defending enemies. The rule says that it is better to defend than to attack. However, the attacking side has a much greater choice of location and time of their attack than the defending side. It turns out that it is easier for the attacking side to take the initiative of the war than for the defending side. Hercules says that they will attack strategically and defend tactfully and win. This is what their fight will look like. Carolina Gallienus asks him if that doesn't mean their enemies will take the initiative. He replies that the truth is that both sides, both defending and attacking, can take the initiative on the battlefield. He says that it is impossible to say for sure about them. They do not defend, but they do not attack, but he will easily allow them to attack. Apparently, the management of Dalios made the townspeople hate him, respectively. His weakness is that he dominates everyone through fear. When the mercenaries realize that the war is a losing one for them and no one will help them, they will flee to the desert. Carolina Gallienus asks him why they should do this. Isn't it easier for soldiers to gather around their leader? Hercules replies that for mercenaries, war is a business he knows. They cannot be so devoted to someone to devote themselves to a war without a chance of victory. He pats her on the head and says that in the end, money decides everything, so you can't trust them. Hercules explains that the oath to the country and the desire to give your life for it are fundamentally different from an army of such soldiers. He thinks that Dalios wants to defeat him as soon as he can, and he doesn't care how disrespected his position is, so they need to tease him. Here, the spiritual beast Bulging Eye tells everyone that enemy soldiers have been discovered. Enemy soldiers from the Personia army are advancing from the front. Hercules asks how many there are. The soldier replies that, based on what the eye sees, there are about 40,000 soldiers. The soldiers begin to say that they have finally appeared. They call them damned traitors. Galfus Gallienus points to something in front. Hercules also sees a panther flag, and from afar, Dalios himself riding furiously towards them. For Hercules, it is reported that the front line consists of about 28,000 mercenaries from abroad. Their flanks consist of about 5,000 light cavalrymen of different races, and finally, the rear is closed by 4,000 well-trained infantrymen and a group of crossbowmen from 3,000 riflemen. Hercules thinks that the information is exactly the same as what he received from the bribed mercenaries. He starts counting his soldiers. 8,000 heavy cavalry, 15,000 infantry, and 5,000 longbow archers for a total of 28,000 soldiers. He says that all their soldiers are barely comparable in numbers to their infantry, but they have advantages in this protection of stakes and trenches. If they simply go straight across the river, it is obvious that they will be bombarded with arrows, like raindrops in a storm. Dalios will try to break through. Hercules doesn't think he has many options other than the simple path ahead. He understands that if this happens, everything will depend on the real strength of their opponents. He tells everyone to listen and says that today will be a new page in the history of Lemuria. After this battle, their empire will be reborn. He shouts that they will regain their territory, their persona. All the soldiers are supporting and shouting behind his words. Dalios looks at him with great hatred, calls him petty, and promises that he will make him regret it. He commands his soldiers to attack with his sword. Immediately, there is a command for Hercules that they are advancing. Hercules tells all his archers to aim and then fire. Everyone simultaneously fires thousands of arrows towards the enemies. Here, the soldiers immediately summon the wind spirits, ask them to hear, and tell them to dance among the arrows. Thus, by creating the direction of the wind, the spirits help to hit the target with arrows. These arrows go straight into the soldiers' faces. Dalios laughs and says, "Is it really the same actions? He used spirits to protect himself, to attack them from afar." Elves are famous for their shooting abilities, so they can easily shoot 10 arrows in a minute. As far as Dalios can see, they had about 5,000 archers, which means that 50,000 arrows will fall on them every minute. He muses out loud that compared to their archers are worse at penetrating armor. But if 1,000 arrows are aimed at the face or an exposed part of the body, he calculates that this is 500 in a minute, 1,000 in 2 minutes. 5,000 soldiers will die or be incapacitated in 10 minutes. Even without critical injuries, it's enough to break their morale. He sees his wounded soldiers walking back, saying they don't want to die, asking for help. Arrows fly straight towards them, sting into their eyes, and soldiers die. Dalios stands menacingly and thinks, have there really been weaklings ready to give up? He asks his soldiers what they are doing at all. He says he won't let his money go to waste. Everyone is looking at him in horror. One with trembling hands reaches for a weapon, takes it, and, in doubt, goes back into battle, followed by others. Hercules sees a small part running towards them and says that it is clear to him that those who run will still be killed, in his opinion. He reflects that they are holding up better than he thought. If this continues, then they can get to their archers. He turns with the thought that the time has come. Hercules calls Galphus Galionas. A huge Galphus Galionas in armor comes out. He asks him if it's time for him to fight, and Hercules replies that it is. He orders Galphus Galionas to take command of a heavy cavalry unit and head there. The soldiers nearby hear this and tell them to wait. Because of the armor of the heavy cavalrymen, it will be almost impossible to get over the trenches. No matter how you look at it, this is an impossible move. Galphus Galionas replies that he understands and asks if he meant it. He replies that it is. The soldiers don't understand what they mean. Hercules asks what distance is suitable, and he answers, saddling his horse, that 10 meters will be enough. Hercules is surprised and asks if he is sure. He turns to His Highness Hercules, smiles, and asks who he thinks he is. He pulls the rope. The horse neighs. He shouts to the others to follow him, not to stop no matter what. He offers to show them the result of all their training, to spread their victory song throughout Lemuria. Galphus Galionas tells Carolina Galionas to stay behind him as support from the rear. She obeys and follows him. They shout to their soldiers to make way because the cavalry is advancing. Hercules stands from afar and counts. Dalios' soldiers don't realize they're seriously planning to break through the trenches. One says they're overestimating horses and armor. Dalios looks and realizes what is wrong. He's shouting at everyone to call off the soldiers now. The mercenaries don't understand what's going on. When Hercules' score reaches 10, he orders the spirit Asmodeus to cancel the illusion. The she-devil listens to him and releases her charms. The trenches that separated them abruptly disappear. The soldiers stand in disbelief. Galphus Galionas tells Caroline that Hercules has removed the technique of illusions of the spirit. She understands and accepts his order. Carolina Galionas screams that she will tear them all to pieces, and Galphus Galionas screams that she will burn them with just her voice. One summons the spirit of Eligos, and the father summons the spirit of Ammon. Carolina Galionas suddenly accelerates and passes by the enemy soldiers. Galphus Gallienus rides behind him on horseback, along with a blazing fire. The soldiers just burn to the ground. Carolina Gallienus drives by and kills the soldiers with her sword. Galphus Gallienus and Carlina approach Dalios from different angles. Hercules shouts at them to go only forward. Subsequently, Carlina and Galphus Gallienus are combined into one road line. Hercules' soldiers are advancing rapidly. Archers are shooting arrows, and Galphus Gallienus is just rushing forward, crushing everyone in his path. Carolina Gallienus follows her father and simply removes the remaining soldiers with her sword, shouting to herself to go forward. Dalios looks and realizes that they will not make it. Who would have thought that he would be able to hide his offensive paths so well with the help of the technology he invented? He begins to doubt whether he really is the son of that fool. How can a hawk be born from a serpent? Dalios grins suspiciously and says it will be fun. He turns to the sergeant and orders him to tell everyone to change their strategy, and he obeys. Abruptly, all the soldiers of Dalios begin to run away. Galphus Gallienus does not understand what it is. Hercules looks and doesn't understand either. They stopped resisting and separated. Why are they doing this? Hercules watches closely and begins to understand what this is all about. His gaze stops in horror. He quietly says to wait. Carolina Gallienus, also frightened, tells her father that the enemy's behavior is strange, who tells her that he also noticed it and asks her not to lose her vigilance. Suddenly, an arrow flies straight into the soldier's eye. Galphus Gallienus and Carolinus Gallienus turn around in horror. The soldiers are slowly falling off their horses. They all see how the soldiers of Dalios are standing with spears and crossbows, aiming right at them. Hercules looks on in horror too. Dalios orders the crossbow unit to move forward. Everyone starts shooting arrows from crossbows. The soldiers go ahead anyway. The arrows hit their horses, they fall. As soon as the soldier falls, enemies approach them and simultaneously kill them with a spear, causing moans of horror and pain. The other soldiers move forward anyway, but they surround them and also dig spears into their bodies. Dalios shouts at everyone to go on the attack. The soldiers of Hercules stand and say that they will not pass, but they themselves stand on nerves and prepare arrows. The enemy mercenaries kill the archers standing in front in a second. Carolina Gallienus panics, and Galphus Gallienus says that this is bad. They are being pushed back. The sergeant tells His Highness Hercules that the first and third units have lost. The infantry are trying to cope with the situation, but they will not be able to hold them back for long. He asks him to give an order. However, in response, there is only silence from Hercules. The sergeant in horror calls Hercules, and he is thinking hard. Hercules finally says that he understood what he was up to. He wants to destroy them with heavy cavalry. He begins to say that he divided the central infantrymen and sent them in different directions, and then sent the crossbowmen and spearmen. Thus, he hinders the movement of their cavalry, which is already exhausted by constant maneuvers. In addition, they have blocked them with a wall of spearmen. Even if they could hold off their crossbowmen and spearmen, if they used light cavalry, it would cover their phalanxes and regrouped infantry, and then they would be trapped. Dalios looks at him from afar and realizes, as he thought, Hercules doesn't really have a backup plan. Hercules says that's how he fights. The sergeant does not understand why Hercules behaves like this in such a situation. He sees that Hercules is smiling, as if he is pleased with himself. Hercules says it's not bad, referring to Dalios' plan. Hercules asks the colonel if he can bring his horse. He confidently says that he is the winner of this battle. At this time, Carlina is fighting with spearmen, breathing heavily, sweating. She is still sitting on a horse. She thinks in parallel that it's a bad thing, but her father is counting on her. Her horse is tired too, but she must find a way to overthrow the enemies. At some point, the crossbowman shoots at her and hits her right on the horse's head. She twitches, eventually falls along with her mistress. Enemies are standing right in front of her and pointing their spears at her head. She understands that it's bad. Those soldiers start asking how much they will get for the head of the enemy commander. The other one answers him, what is he talking about at all? It's just a child. He says that this is not the case. She is the daughter of the famous Galphus Gallienus racing fire. He is ready to bet that they will earn a lot of money, considering that this is a famous knight. Another offers the option to put it up for auction. The other agrees and offers to go to the commander with a grin. In a second, Carolina Gallienus gets up in a rage and deprives the head of a soldier. She screams that for such a frivolous discussion of such things, she will not allow someone like them to spoil Hercules' plans. She attacks, and behind her, Hercules rushes forward, shouting to his soldiers to follow him. Everyone listens to him. They're all coming down the mountain. Dalios laughs and wonders if he really decided to go to his death with his precious army. However, Lemuria has only about 10,000 soldiers, no more. Even if there are a few more, nothing will change. However, he looks more closely. His expression freezes, and then he is horrified because he sees a field full of soldiers. Dalios doesn't understand what's going on. The soldiers get scared and shout that they didn't think this would happen. They didn't sign up for it, not for that kind of money, so they all run away. A huge horde of soldiers rushes towards them. Dalios calls his soldiers fools, ordering them to return to their positions, because this is the spirit of illusion. No one listens to him. Dalios shouts that it can't be that Lemuria has so many warriors. His soldiers run away anyway. Dalios angrily clenches his teeth. Dalios' sword falls from his hands, and he lowers his head in frustration. Carolina Gallionis looks and says that it seems that the enemy soldiers are retreating. Then Hercules calls him, and she turns around. He holds out his hand and tells her to grab. She looks, then blushes. She holds his hand, and he lifts her up and puts her on the horse next to him. She turns to him and says she's really sorry, but he interrupts her and says it's okay. She's fighting well for her first battle. She raises her head and says if she can ask something. Hercules listens to her attentively. She asks why he hid that Lemuria has so many warriors. She thinks that the outcome of the battle would have been different if they had fought at full strength initially. Hercules smiles and says that maybe these are the mercenaries he bribed. Carolina Gallionis looks at them and sees how the warriors simply disappear. The entire crowd of warriors instantly evaporates into thin air. Carolina Gallionis sees how few there really are and realizes that it was an illusion. The she-devil appears and tells His Highness Hercules that an illusion like this will require an appropriate reward. Hercules tells her that he knows, so let him disappear already. She disappears with a grin, saying that then she will come for him later. Hercules tells Caroline that it is difficult to destroy all 40,000 warriors one at a time. As soon as the enemy loses the desire to fight, having seen the illusion, victory is in their pocket. He says that Dalios will not be able to organize a competent defense after such a defeat. The outcome of the battle is already obvious. Hercules shouts to Galphus Gallionis that it's time to retreat. He tells him to return to base. Galphus Gallionis tells him that he trusts Caroline and the soldier to him. He turns to him and tells him that he will stay a little longer. His gaze shows rage and bloodlust. Hercules turns away with Caroline and says that he understands him. He asks him to make sure that there is no tail, let him not overdo it. Galphus Gallionis replies that he understood him. Galphus Gallionis begins to burn with flames. The soldiers surround Dalios, pointing their swords at him. And so the first war under the leadership of Hercules as emperor of the Lemurian Empire ended in complete victory. Lemuria's army won with minimal losses, while Personia completely lost its mercenary infantry. After the end of the war, there is a purge. Many people are treated, weapons are collected, tents are erected. Soldiers are eating hot food. Hercules is sitting in the great chamber and writing some kind of letter. Galphus Gallionis comes to him and says that they have brought him. Dalios enters the tent with his head held high. Behind him is Carolina Gallionis. In front is Galphus Gallionis. Hercules says he thought Dalios would resist a little more, but he's being quite quiet. Dalios says that after such a devastating defeat, the remaining soldiers will not follow him. Unfortunately, neither blood kinship nor authority connect them with them. Dalios looks at him with great enthusiasm and turns to His Highness Hercules, saying how much he underestimated his abilities. It's a complete rout, he asks, to admit his guilt for this rudeness. Galphus Gallionis gets angry and asks how dare he speak so arrogantly while being tied up. Hercules laughs and says that it is true. This time the victory is his. But if it was a direct collision on the plain? He turns to Dalios and asks what he thinks. Dalios replies that he would have won then. Galphus Gallionis gets even angrier. Hercules replies that he thinks so too. Galphus Gallionis and Caroline look at Hercules in shock. Hercules says that he has learned a lot since the first fight with him. He has just surpassed his predecessor. He tells Dalios that he said he would admit his guilt. Can he hear the terms of the peace treaty? Dalios says that Hercules will receive all the lands. In return, he asks for the lives of his close subordinates, whom he raised from a very young age. Galphus Gallionis looks at him in shock. Hercules' eyes are also surprised. Galphus Gallionis swears if he has any idea how much chaos they will create. Dalios tells them that they can deport them. Dalios says that only they followed him to the last, with the rest of the troops, and they are free to do whatever they want. They can give them to the mob, or personally avenge the previous emperor. Let them do what they want. Hercules gets up from his chair, agrees with him, and says that he will save the lives of his subordinates. Carolina Gallionis and Galphus Gallionis are simultaneously indignantly calling Hercules. He says that he will also have one condition. Hercules says that it is impossible to assess the damage they have done to the empire, as well as to its national authority, and a bunch of heads. His subordinates will not pay for it. Even his head, which 10 million inhabitants will turn into a ball, will not be able to atone for it. Dalios bows his head and asks what he will do then. Hercules smiles at him. Hercules tells Dalios that he will become his vassal. He obviously did not expect such a condition. Galphus Gallionis and Carolina Gallionis look at him in horror. Galphus Gallionis and Carolina Gallionis asked Hercules what he is saying. Dalios starts laughing out loud and says that he knew Hercules was unusual, but not that much. Dalios asks if he really wants to make a vassal of the one who imprinted his father's shame in history. Hercules asks him with a smile if this is really that unusual. Hercules says that his predecessor did nothing but lose. Now Lemuria does not have even a grain of its former power. So he thought, why not get an experienced warrior for personal use? In addition, the problem is that at the moment Galphus Gallionis is the only experienced commander to whom he can entrust a detachment of 10,000 people. Hercules says that their army is losing to the mercenaries in skill, so I would like to learn some skills. Besides this, he is going to pay the reward that his predecessor pocketed. Dalios turns away and tells His Highness Hercules that you shouldn't be amused by this. He's a mercenary. He can shoot an arrow in the back. Hercules says he is absolutely serious. Dalios asks him what will happen if he refuses. Hercules looks at him in surprise at first, and then he laughs loudly, scaring Galphus Gallionis and Caroline. Hercules tells Dalios that he just offered him a great place in the sun, but he's so disgusted by the idea of being someone's doggy, it's clear to him now. He laughs, turns to Dalios, and says that he told him to shoot an arrow in the back. The Emperor's blood magic is abruptly activated in him. Hercules raises his head and asks him who he is talking to now. Suddenly, Dalios begins to tense up, suffocate. Galphus Gallionis and Carolinas freeze in place, not daring to move. Dalios doesn't understand what it is, what kind of unimaginable magical power it is. He can't breathe. He keeps thinking that he's just a brat. Where did he get so much magic power from? He thinks it's his spell. Then Carolina Gallionis breaks down and falls down, gasping for breath. She slowly closes her eyes and begins to lose consciousness. Hercules catches her and apologizes. Galphus Gallionis is barely holding on to the table and is also breathing heavily. Dalios falls back abruptly and tries to catch his breath with his head down, his face full of fear and horror. Hercules turns to Dalios and says that he will not expel his subordinates from the country. He is going to find a suitable land somewhere and settle them there. Their possessions have fallen into disrepair, so it will take a lifetime to work the land. Hercules smiles, looks at Dalios, and asks if he understands what it all means. Dalios begins to realize that the moment he decided to attack him, he already had a collar around his neck. Hercules puts his hands on his shoulders and says that's how it is. Starting today, he expects his cooperation. Dalios looks at Hercules in horror, but with a certain excitement. He cannot believe that this is the son of that fool, His Highness Adrian III. In the big castle, they begin to say that Personia has been conquered. Is it really true? Has Dalios lost? Someone gives the order to announce it tomorrow and begin preparations for the banquet. His Highness Adrian, the brother of His Highness Titus and Hercules, also hears about this. He breaks everything around him and screams furiously. The servant tells him that if he rages like this, he will be heard. His Highness Adrian says he can't believe that such a small country could win. He is furious and says that he is much better suited to the role of emperor. He clutches a dark cloak in his hands. All the citizens of Lemuria rejoice that their emperor has returned. They look at the gate and see a crowd of warriors led by Hercules. There is a triumphant return of the hero to rolling applause. The townspeople shout and praise Hercules. They all go through the whole empire to cheers. Galphus Gallionis with Christopher and Hercules with Caroline. They arrive at the castle. Kroll, Lucanos, and His Highness Titus are standing there, and they say they've been waiting for him. Hercules asks if anything happened while he was gone. Lucanos replies that they all worked tirelessly. He says that they have heard about his achievements in Personia and are incredibly happy about it. Hercules proudly replies that they won, after all, and this helps to increase his rating. Hercules stops abruptly, looks around. They ask him what happened. He asks His Highness Titus where His Highness Adrian is, who apologizes for not being there on such an important day. He knows he doesn't like to show himself in public. Hercules accepts his answer. Lucanos tells Galphus Gallienus that she has heard that he has also performed admirably. However, she sees Gallienus Dalios instead of Galphus and screams in fear and fright. Galphus Gallienus asks if Dalios has decided to throw the amnesty of Hercules down the drain, which is rude. Christopher suggests drowning him in the Lemur Sea. Lucanos asks Hercules what Dalios is doing here. They were planning to publicly execute him, isn't that right? Hercules tells her that she can consider him a trophy of war, which scares her even more. Hercules says he will be a vassal. His Highness Titus says Dalios has great muscles, and Dalios turns on him like he's about to pounce on him. Kroll twitches. Lucanos asks if Hercules is sure, then adds that no matter how it was, thanks to them, the war ended successfully. She prepared a place for them at the banquet, so let it pass. Hercules is surprised. Kroll believes that Hercules is tired after a long hike, and there are no urgent tasks for today either, so he can rest. Hercules smiles maliciously and thinks that, in other words, he is completely free today. His Highness Titus says that this is their first victory in a long time. He will prepare the best wine for him. Galphus Gallienus thanks His Highness Titus. His Highness Titus also says that he will certainly write a heroic story about him. He asks to be allowed to hear everything in detail during the banquet, but Hercules disappears in a split second. His Highness Titus asks where he is. Lucanos says he was just here. Galphus Gallienus looks around and asks where Carolina Gallienus is. He asks in a panic if anyone has seen Caroline. His Highness Titus understands and assumes that he has gone for the reward. Caroline Gallienus feels embarrassed and turns to His Highness Hercules, saying that this is her first time wearing such clothes. She asks if it suits her to hide her face. Hercules enjoys it and replies that it fits perfectly, just perfectly. Carolina Gallienus, in a maid costume, covers her knees, and in a trembling voice tells His Highness Hercules that then she is glad. She tries to pull down the hem of her dress, hiding her legs. Hercules tells her that it's great, it suits her very well. Carolina Gallienus feels a chill. She asks him if she can change her clothes already. Hercules strictly calls her by name and says that he just explained to her. Wasn't it so? She blushes even more. She says with great embarrassment that it is so. She is a humble servant of the master, and she will serve him. Hercules enjoys it and tells her that she is doing well, and she doesn't understand how it all came to this. She had indeed talked about a reward if the Lemur army could prove itself, but she had never imagined that His Highness Titus would prepare such a uniform. She keeps thinking that her skirt lifts up even at the slightest movement. She's so ashamed. Hercules suggests starting with tea. Carolina Gallienus asks him what kind of tea he would like. He replies that he wants a black one and asks if she sees a red jar at the very top. She replies that everything will be done, she will bring a ladder. Hercules asks to wait and says that the stairs are forbidden. He tells her that she has to handle it on her own and can't use magic either. She reaches for the tea jar with a trembling hand, and with her other hand she covers the bottom. She moans from physical exertion. She understands that she won't be able to get it that way, but if she lets go of the skirt, then it will be what it will be. Hercules asks Caroline to remove her hand from her skirt, saying that this is an order. She blushes even more and removes her hand. She keeps reaching out, telling herself that there's still a little bit left, that the jar is so close to her. The skirt is pulled up. She wonders how she can allow the proud knight of the Lemur army to appear before the emperor in this form. She just wants him not to look at her. And he stares intently, wanting just a little more. Carolina Gallienus realizes that he is looking at her. Hercules asks her if it's taking too long for such a simple task. She says in an uncertain voice that she is not getting enough. Hercules says she's an elf, so let her just jump up. He asks with a serious face, or is she ready to disobey orders just because her skirt can pull up? He has prepared the best clothes so that she appears in all her glory, and this is all her loyalty to the emperor. Carolina Gallienus thinks that this is true, because Hercules rushed into battle in order to save her, and she hesitates in such a simple situation, not even able to serve him tea. She gets ready to jump, and jumps high up to tea with the idea that she should return the favor. Her skirt is pulled up so that everything inside is visible. She gets down and apologizes for waiting. She'll make tea right away. Carolina Gallionis sees that Hercules is hiding his face and says that she will have to thank His Highness Titus. Carolina Gallionis screams in horror, realizing what has happened. She makes tea by blowing her lips. She tells His Highness Hercules that he needs to wait a little while for the tea leaves to brew. Hercules sees that she is angry, but still continues to call him master. He calls her by name and asks her to come over for reconciliation. She relents and, pushing aside the countertop, approaches him. Hercules slaps his knees and tells her to sit down. She objects, saying that she is heavy. He tells her with a smile that this is an order. She sits on his lap and doesn't look him in the eye. Hercules asks what is wrong with her. During training, she does it without hesitation. She replies that it's not even a training session. Hercules hugs her sharply and says she is so cute, and she screams that he won't bribe her with such cheap flattery. He apologizes to her and says that he seems to have played a little too much. He really apologizes to her. Carolina Gallionis asks him if something is bothering him. He replies that this is true. He always looked at his father's back, and now for the first time he went to war himself. For him, this is a lot of pressure. He says that the common people are closely watching the emperor, political and financial issues, and infrastructure improvements, which is why he had to win this war in order for people to accept him. Hercules admits that, thanks to the victory, the number of people dissatisfied with him will decrease, and this is like a mountain off his shoulders, and Caroline was saved. Carolina Gallionis says that then he should show up at the banquet. He should appear in heroic form in front of Christos and the rest of the bureaucrats. She tells him to show his strength and masculinity, to show the same way they showed her on the battlefield. Without a shred of doubt, he went straight to her. Hercules looks at her in surprise. From such a reaction, Carolina Gallionis begins to doubt and apologizes that at such a moment, she probably should call him emperor. She talked too much. Hercules plays with her cheeks, but she does not understand and asks what he is doing. Hercules doesn't hear her and continues to pull her cheeks. Hercules says that she is right. If he does this, then Christ will not find fault with him. He asks her if she could be his maid for a while longer. She strokes his hand with a wide smile and agrees with joy. They merge in a kiss of love. Hercules and Caroline Gallionis appear at the celebration. Christopher points to the people, where Dalios and Galphus Gallionis have staged a muscle show. A frail Kroll stands behind. His Highness Titus captured this picture and painted Hercules himself in the middle. Hercules points at Christopher, who resists and wants to run away. Galphus Gallionis puts his hand on Christopher's shoulder, making him tremble. He wins. Dalios glares furiously at Galphus Gallionis. His Highness Titus continues to add characters to his painting. Hercules looks and looks contentedly. Hercules raises his glass in front of hundreds of people in the hall. Everyone supports him, and Carlina looks on happily. Hercules sleeps in the dead of night. A she-devil appears from a hole and calls him. He wakes up and sees the she-devil sitting on him and says it's a beautiful night. She says she's here to fulfill the contract. Hercules wakes up and says with displeasure that it's her, and the devil says that he has finally woken up. She smiles slyly and says that she called him so many times and already thought he was dead. Hercules asks what she's talking about, because they're in her dream right now. She replies that it is. She knows that he is tired now, but a contract is a contract. She says that, as always, she will get what she needs. She bites her lips into his, but Hercules does not react in any way. Her name is Asmodeus. He's the only one who can see her. It's his contracted spirit. She used to be a cherub. However, she became a fallen angel, having transgressed beyond the mortal sin of lust. Now she is a demon. Among the 72 pillars, she is the 32nd, and she is the queen in rank. Whoever signs a contract with her will get a huge advantage. In return, she absorbs a huge amount of mana and physical fluid. Not to say that Hercules does not enjoy it. He trembles and moans. The she-devil swallows everything. Hercules asks her to try not to let him die from it. She says that she has just started. However, an ordinary man does not experience meeting her. He has since gained spiritual energy. He doesn't understand and asks since when. She replies that since when it was untouched. 5 years ago, the priest told His Highness Hercules that it was great because he had completed the task so easily, so he had a wonderful future ahead of him. And Hercules, who was 10 years old, replied that anyone from his family could have done it. It was enough to look into the library once a day for anyone to do it. Lucanos wants to say that the other emperors failed, and then decides not to say anything. Hercules thinks that the same thing happens every day. He's sick of it. Suddenly, he feels a pain in his head, and Lucanos gets scared. He does not understand what it is, what kind of picture it is that pops up in his head. He has not seen these places in other countries or in library books. Is it possible that they do not belong to this world at all? He has absolutely no idea what kind of people and places they are. He understands that these are definitely not his memories. Lucanos asks him if he's okay. He can call a doctor. He replies that there is no need to do this. She says that he has already turned white. He gets angry and screams even louder. He says that he will rest a little and pass. He asks her not to tell anyone anything. She obeys him. He says that's the end of their classes today. Lucanos asks to call the maid if he needs to. Hercules concentrates on his thoughts. A portrait of a man pops up in his head. He doesn't understand who he is. Then someone knocks on his door. Hercules asks to leave him alone, but the knocks do not stop. Then he opens the door and sees just Asmodeus in front of him. She smiles at him broadly. He doesn't understand if she's new. He swears. Didn't they teach her manners? Force him to open the door with an insistent knock? She is defiantly indignant. That's the greeting. She says that she seems to have realized that she did not choose the best outfit. She changes the maid's costume for a robe and asks if it could be so then. Hercules is shocked by this. Hercules fearfully closes the doors, expelling the she-devil. He doesn't understand what's going on, because these clothes are from his memories. He wonders who she is. He twitches at the sound of her laughter. She appears from above and says that she never ceases to be pleased by the surprised faces of people. He doesn't understand how she does it. She says it looks like he still has a memory. He freezes in place, startled. They ask directly what she is talking about. She says who is inside him because he has been tormented by this question for a long time. She tells him not to worry, explaining that these memories do not belong to him. She says that this man and his memories are from a completely different world. These are his memories, not the boy's. This is not a memory from another world, and they absolutely do not concern him. He wonders what other world it is. Maybe she's talking about another kingdom. She replies that this is not the case, and that she is talking about another planet. This world is from a different time frame. Hercules asks her how she knows about this. She replies that it's because she fed him these memories. He grabs his throat in shock and asks again how she fed it. She believes that he no longer remembers about it. She says that when he was just in the bud, she implanted this man's memories into him. She was wondering which of them would survive. It seems that a man without ambition did not have a chance to defeat him, who was vain, ambitious, and self-respecting. As a result, his soul disappeared, and memories and experiences were passed on to him. She says that now he is him, and that man's soul is no longer a threat to him. Hercules calmly accepts this information. He asks her to wait, thinks about it, and says that something is still bothering him. He asks her why she would choose him. She grins and says that a few hundred years ago, there was a man who united all the people of Lemuria and founded a monarchical country. He was her former master. His new approaches to creating a country surprised her more than once. She could not allow his country to fall. Therefore, in the end, this man would have died just like that, but his knowledge is really colossal, and his mind is outstanding. He could be a salvation and a ray of light for Lemuria, so she used him. But what's more important now is that they have to sign a contract. She flies very close to him. He does not understand what kind of contract. She asks her to forgive her for not introducing herself yet. She says that of the 72 great pillar spirits, she is 32, besides being a queen. Her name is Asmodeus. Hercules realizes that this is one of the great evils of humanity. If he makes a contract with her, then he is finished. He pulls on the doors and gets angry because they won't open. He shouts, calls for security and Lucanos, but no one comes up. The devil's hands reach out to him. She presses him to the ground and says that they are inside a dream, so no one will come. In the real world, he is just sleeping. He resists, but the she-devil begins to serve him. She says his innocence will be the price, and his liquid will be the seal. She says that she will make a man out of him, and he is outraged who would agree to such a thing at all. She laughs with pleasure and says it's wonderful. She loves people who are full of life. She wonders how long he will last. Hercules hardly remembers what happened after that. When he woke up, it was already morning, and he was lying in bed. He remembers it all and says that it was like that. The she-devil lies next to her and hugs him. She tells him that after the contract, he has become a wonderful toy for her. He asks her to stop. He still has a persistent feeling like there are a bunch of bugs in his stomach. A little later, a man sits alone in the back streets of the village. A man in a raincoat approaches him. He immediately asks about the item. The first one replies that he has the item, but first asks him for money. He holds out the bag. He gives it back and wishes him luck, so it's not his business anymore. He's leaving. The guy in the raincoat holds a small potion in his palm and says it's all for the Empire. At the banquet, everyone is joyfully celebrating the victory. A little later, His Highness Adrian sneaks up and quietly walks down the corridor. He approaches the main hall, where the king's crown is capped on a pillow. He says that Hercules is the emperor, pure nonsense. He says that Hercules turns up his nose too much, calling him the youngest. He turns to his 3 subjects and says that the empire needs him, right? They just agree with him. His Highness Adrian gets angry and says that his father chose him initially. He stretches out his hands to the crown and wants to take it. Then he hears the voice of Lucasan, who says that touching her is forbidden. His Highness Adrian is not so nervous. Lucanos turns to His Highness Adrian, and he looks at her hatefully because she interfered with him. She explains that this is a great treasure of the Lemurian Empire, which has been passed down from generation to generation in an honest way. Only the Archbishop and the Emperor can afford to touch it. It is not an object that can be lightly touched. His Highness Adrian starts shouting that his father chose him. How dare she even tell him, the imperial son? She replies that he is right, because the Emperor planned to choose him as his heir, because he thinks so. She says she will ask him once again not to touch the imperial crown. If there is even a hint of this, then he may not expect a prayer of repose from her church. He gets angry, trembles, and tells her that he'll remember it to her someday. He abruptly turns away and leaves with his subjects. Those priests say with displeasure that he just ran away. Those who do not receive the prayer of rest are equated with sinners. It is obvious that he will simply retreat. Lucanos reflects that you need to be more vigilant just in case, but there may be a problem with him. At this time, a feast is held in the castle. Various dishes, soups, pizza, fish, and meat are served on the table. Hercules and Carolina Gallionis are looking at all this with great appetite. The cook tells His Highness Hercules that he has prepared for him in the best possible way. Palazzo Margherita, caprese with calzones and tomato paste. Lunch is plentiful with his favorite tomatoes. Carolina Gallionis tells His Highness Hercules that it looks very tasty. Hercules takes a slice of pizza and takes a bite. The cook asks how he likes the taste. He replies that it's delicious and that it turned out even better than before. The cook says joyfully that his words are a delight to the ears. He will try even harder to cook food that will make him shed tears of happiness. Having reduced the cost of infrastructure and maintenance of the palace, he used the money for other needs, cooking. They use only the freshest products from all over the empire, and the cooking is handled by a family of the best chefs that my father hired. That's why all the food in front of him is the best in the whole world. But there are nuances. He says he's already tired of it. The cook is horrified and asks if he didn't like something. He replies that this is not the case. He explains that he really liked these tomatoes at first. Pizza, soups, everything is very tasty, but the taste practically does not change, so he is already fed up with such food. He sadly asks how it is. Maybe he wants to try something else. Hercules reflects and remembers his past. He says he wants to try the curry. The cook thinks about curry and says that he will cook right away. Hercules stops him and says it's different. He says that curry is a common name. It uses many different seasonings and spices. It is boiled, fried, sometimes even cooked with fruits. The main spices are cumin, coriander, cardamom, turmeric, chili pepper, allspice, and so on. Sometimes black or cayenne pepper is added. Carolina Gallionis is surprised that there is even such a food. The cook thinks that all these spices are quite spicy. If he knows all the ingredients, then it will be possible to cook it. Judging by the cook's face, it will be difficult to reproduce from memory. Hercules tells the cook that he can search for spices even outside their empire. A little later, he introduces a new chef named Kanala. He greets everyone. The first cook gets tense. He asks what this servant is doing here. He reminds that he said he wanted to try curry. Almost all spices can be found in his country, so he brought their chefs. He says it's true that he's a former servant, but Messi's church converted him to their faith. Now he's free. The first cook replies that it is clear to him. Kanala shakes hands with the cook and says that he is glad to meet him, calling him the boss. The latter is surprised that he talks so politely. Hercules orders them to get down to business. Nala obeys him, and his first cook asks him to wait. He says that, as the head of the kitchen and the one who serves for the benefit of the Lemur palace, he has pride. He cannot let anyone into his shrine. He asks if he can at least test his cooking skills and then make a decision. Hercules agrees and says he is right. In this case, he gathers several people at the table to conduct that very check. Hercules shouts that everything is ready. He has assembled the best jury for the benefit of the future palace. He shouts that it is time for tasting. Including him, there are 7 people on the jury. They must satisfy each of the languages. For formality, he hired Nal as a court cook. He's wondering what the curry tastes like. Who knows? Because he hasn't tried it yet either. Galphus Gallienus says he has tasted the food of the Sindilians. Christopher says that he and the previous emperor visited Sindilla once. Lucanos says that for a simple bishop, eating with lots of spices is an unacceptable luxury. Dalios says menacingly, let him just try to slip some trash. He doesn't understand what he's doing here. She turns out to be crying and apologizing to everyone for waiting. He brings 1 large flatbread and 3 small cups. He imagines that it's curry with chicken and butter, curry with spinach, Kimalai curry, and tandoori chicken. Galphus Gallienus says, what a nice smell. Christopher says, what nostalgia. He immediately remembers those times. Carolina Gallienus says she looks very appetizing. Dalios looks at it and thinks it's too hot, because he's a cat. The cook looks and says nothing. Lucason says that first of all they will give a prayer to the Lord. Lucanos says a prayer, thanking the Almighty for the food. They will kindly accept this gift. Everyone prays and says to bless the food on this table so that they can support their body and spirit. Hercules happily claps and says it's time to eat. He tears off a piece of flatbread and thinks about where to start. He dips into 1 curry. He brings a piece to his mouth and chews it thoroughly. Panther Dalios and Carolina Gallienus look at him and wait for his reaction. Kanala asks him how he likes the taste. Hercules happily replies that it tastes good to him. He asks the others to try it too. One says he will try it with spinach, the other wants kimalai, and the third then with tandoori chicken. After 30 minutes, there's almost no food left. Carolina Gallienus enjoys her meal and says how delicious it is for her. Galphus Gallienus praises and says what an exciting taste, and Christopher dreamily says that this is the same Sindilian cuisine. Lucanos barely eats and says that it is not so sinful to eat such delicious food. Kegala asks Panther Dalios why he is not eating, and he replies that he is waiting for it to cool down. Kanala smiles innocently, talks to everyone, and asks. The first cook desperately thinks that they seem to have appreciated his cooking. He doubts, looks at the cooked food, and wonders what the wife tastes like, the food of unknown people. In truth, he does not like spicy food. He takes a piece, dips it in the curry, and starts to taste it. His eyes snap open at the taste. Hercules says he's surprised it tastes good, but he thought the food would be much spicier. Kanala asks him to forgive him and says that he made it according to his own recipe. Hercules is more surprised by this. He says that, as they know, it is very hot in his country and they cool down thanks to cold sweat, and when they eat spicy food, they sweat a lot, which is why their curry is so spicy. He eats curry, sweats, and becomes cooler. But he doesn't know how the locals feel about spicy food, so he added some apples and honey. Carolina Gallienus says that she personally would have preferred a slightly sweeter taste, but even so, it was very tasty. Kanala replies that he is very glad that even here they know about the cuisine of his region, and he likes to watch the pleased faces of those who eat his food. The poorer first cook remembers his journey when he was called a useless idiot. They said that he would peel potatoes all his life, let him mind his own business. They called him a redneck, and he himself, peeling potatoes, read a recipe book. He sadly thinks that one day he will cook delicious food for the emperor himself. Hercules raises his hand and says that it's time to pass judgment. He asks those who would like to taste Kanal's cooking again to raise their hand. Galphus Gallienus raises his hand that he would eat a little more spicy food. Christopher and Lucanos agree with him. Carolina Gallienus says she would like a slightly sweeter curry. Pantera Dalios agrees and says it's delicious. Hercules says that he would also like to try a more spicy curry, or even with other ingredients. Hercules asks the boss what he thinks. He ponders and then raises his hand too. He says that in order to prepare more suitable food for the Lemurians, they should get rid of his habit of being bitter about everything. Nala happily thanks him. The chef swears and asks to be warned in advance if he needs utensils of this size. He apologizes and says that it was necessary to make tandoor bread. Hercules looks at them arguing with a smile, then asks Nal to carry more. He asks the others if they want to. Carolina Gallionis says she likes tandoori chicken. Galphus Gallionis asks for the same and Himalayan in addition. Christopher asks for spinach, and Lucanos asks God's forgiveness for this. Panther Dalios is still eating and says it's delicious. The chef gets up and says that he will prepare desserts for them. He goes out and walks down the corridor, thinking aloud that looking at Nal, he involuntarily remembers his past. He looks at the coat of arms of his country and thinks that he is probably clinging too much to his defeat. He has forgotten the most important thing. He thinks about people's smiles. He cheerfully goes and says that after such a hot meal, he will prepare refreshing fruit desserts. He notices someone behind him and turns abruptly. At this time, Hercules slaps his stomach and says that he hasn't eaten so much in a long time. Then the boss comes in and apologizes for waiting. He comes up with a tray and says that the desserts are ready, and Hercules is happy about it. He brings a sliced melon and, once again, apologizes for waiting. Hercules tastes and eats sweetly. He says with a big smile that such a pleasant sweetness is the best thing after curry. He thinks the melon is just the best. Carolina Gallionis enjoys the way he enjoys his food. Kunala serves everyone a melon. Everyone eats kindly. One Panther Dalios looks suspiciously at the melon. Hercules wants to eat the last piece, but then realizes that something is wrong. He notices some liquid under the fruit. He shouts sharply at everyone to stop eating. Everyone looks up in fright, looks questioningly at Hercules, and he tries to make himself vomit. Carolina Gallionis abruptly rushes to help Hercules, but then the Panther Dalios pulls her back and punches her in the stomach. Christopher and Lucanos are horrified. Caroline Gallionis also starts to vomit. She can barely stand on her feet. Galphus Gallionis begins to fight with Panther Dalios and shout what he allows himself. But then Hercules tells Galphus Gallionis to stand, stating that the melon is poisoned. Everyone is horrified to ask if His Highness has been poisoned. The other shuts up the first one, saying that it is forbidden to talk about it, at least not so loudly. Someone says they heard the poison was in his favorite fruit, melon. They are wondering how he feels, who did it. Here, the woman is rushing forward. The servant asks her, the princess, to stop. Where is she going? She replies that she's going to Hercules. She has to talk to him. The servant tells her that she cannot do this, because the previous emperor forbade him to do it. Evdokia is the mother of His Highness Adrian and Hercules. She says that Hercules is the future of their country, and, more importantly, he is her son. It is quite obvious that she will worry. She is very worried and does not understand how this could happen. She asks the Lord to help her son. Lucanos examines Hercules and says that his temperature and pulse are fine. There are no abnormalities. Hercules says that he was lucky that he did not have time to bite off where the poison was. Christopher wonders who would have thought that they would poison the melon. Hercules says that most likely they made small holes and then let a verified amount of poison into them. If they had not noticed the reaction of the poison and the silver plate, he would have already been under the lid of the coffin. He turns around and tells Panther Dalios that it's all thanks to him. He replies that he just noticed rust on his plate. He points at Caroline and hints that someone sitting next to her was eating her up. Carolina Gallionis says with a sigh that she has nothing to answer. Galphus Gallionis apologizes to Hercules and says he was distraught when their former enemy hit his daughter. Hercules replies that he understands him. Galphus Gallionis thanks Panther Dalios for saving her daughter. He just turns away and farts. Hercules now turns his attention to the boss and asks if he really tried to kill him. The chef looks up in despair and says in a panic that he cooks with all his heart and would never have thought about killing his own creation, especially about killing the emperor himself. Hercules then asks him where he got that melon. The boss is tense at first and then replies that it was brought by His Highness Adriana's assistant, Mr. Domenico. He says that they met him in the hallway when he was heading to the kitchen. He told him that it was to celebrate His Highness's victory. Galphus Gallionis says that he seems to be from the aristocracy close to His Highness Adrian 4 years ago. When the land tax was revised and increased, he took out his anger on everyone. Christopher adds that since then he has sided with His Highness Adrian, assuming that his handiwork, then this is quite a possible outcome. Lucanos tenses up and then finally tells Hercules that this can be proof. and tells him about the crown. Everyone is shocked to ask if he tried to touch the crown, so it's a crime, so that's why he wasn't at the banquet. Lucanos asks if they will try to find Dominic. Hercules replies that it is useless. He is responsible for the import and export of fruits. By arranging an interrogation, they will achieve nothing. The boss shouts to Hercules that he really did not know that the melon was poisoned. He asks him to believe him. Nala supports him and says that the boss is a good man. He even shook his hand. Hercules irritably replies that he knows that he was simply taken advantage of, but he cannot say this with complete certainty now, and until his doubts are completely dispelled, he forbids the chef to visit the kitchens. The chief's face and Nala's immediately darken. The guards take the chief away, followed by Nala. Hercules asks Caroline. She also ate the poisoned melon. He also told her to rest. Why is she here at all? Carolina Gallionis replies that she can't just go to bed when Hercules' life is in danger. She screams that it is at such a moment that she must be there to protect him. Suddenly, he pulls her in and makes her lie down next to him on the bed, covering her with a blanket. She starts blushing. She wants to resist, but then the panther Dalios gets scared and jerks from the fact that the doors open abruptly. A woman comes in, asking for forgiveness in advance. A woman approaches and anxiously asks how he feels. Galphus Gallionis recognizes Mary, and Carolina Gallionis jumps when she sees her mom. This is Mary, Galphus Gallionis' wife and Caroline's mother. Galphus Gallionis swears, because he told her not to come here, and she replies that she was worried. Hercules says there's nothing to worry about. Carolina Gallionis is worried as she noticed that she was lying in Hercules' bed. She takes Hercules' hand and apologizes for the fact that her husband and daughter were so useless at the right time. She asks if there's anything she can do to help. Hercules then tells her to thank Panther Dalios. It was he who saved her daughter. She approaches, bows low to Panther Dalios, and expresses her great gratitude. He turns away again and snorts. Then she picks him up and tells him what kind of muscles he has, just like her husband. Panther Dalios doesn't understand what she needs at all. Mary turns to Hercules and asks if he still has an appetite. Maybe he will try the soup with beans and garlic. He agrees. Lucanos says that this is a great idea, saying that garlic is able to neutralize the poison, recommends that he consume more of it in the near future. Hercules is happy and asks Caroline Gallionis if she will be there too. She is shy and says that she does not really like garlic. He holds out a spoon and asks to open his mouth. She tastes the soup and thinks in parallel that in such an environment she cannot even physically help him. Mary looks at this picture with a grin. She quietly approaches Hercules and whispers that Caroline Gallionis is still innocent and untouched. She is already choking on food. She swears that she took the time to talk about such a thing. She tells her that she's worried about her future, that she's immersed in martial arts, that she doesn't pay attention to anything. She worries if she will ever become a wife. She keeps swearing, but Galphus Gallionis also says that such information is extremely important. Mary hugs Caroline, calls her very sweet, and Caroline Gallionis asks her to stop because the emperor himself is in front of them. Hercules reflects that after the incident with his brother more than 10 years ago, his father revised the direction of their upbringing and limited his meetings with his mother. He forbade them to address each other as parent and child, and they met only for the sake of formality, and this continues to this day, even when the father died. She continues to visit him, but as the emperor, even when he goes down with a fever, she has never come to check on him. It is obvious that she will not come now. He thinks it's not something that makes him sad. Then his thoughts are interrupted by his mother's voice. The servant behind apologizes and says he tried to stop her. Hercules calls her mom. Christopher tells his sister the princess that this is not allowed. She then resists the order of the previous emperor. Evdokia tells him to be quiet, and Hercules says he needs to talk to him. Hercules orders them to move away from their mother. She kneels down in front of him. Hercules reflects that it's true. Now he doesn't just have a fever. They tried to poison him, and she, of course, will come when her son is in such danger. She tells him that she has come to talk about what happened today. She asks if they have found out who did it. Hercules replies that he is almost certain that his brother is involved, but he has no proof. Evdokia raises her head in horror. Hercules understands that for the mother, they are both equally her children, but the brother crossed the line. But even in this case, she is likely to act like her father. Evdokia asks him to spare His Highness Adriana. Hercules is shocked. His eyes slowly dim as soon as he realizes what his mother came for. Everyone watches in horror as she makes excuses and says that His Highness Adrian, in order to become who he is now, he tried every day, and she is the one who always looks out for him. She came to tell him about it. She is sure that he acted impulsively, but did not want to harm him. Besides, he is his own brother. She asks to spare him. Hercules asks, so she didn't come to check on him at all. She doesn't understand what he's talking about. The guy says he can't do anything to him anyway because he doesn't have any proof. Hercules tells Eudoxia that he, as emperor, cannot turn a blind eye to this, so Hadrian will be put on trial. She looks at him in shock and then clutches his clothes tightly, asking him to spare her son. Christopher tries to stop her, but she keeps asking him not to kill him. She furiously shouts the name of Hercules. He tells his mother that he will try his best. She freezes in a terrible expression on her face. She gets up, hanging her arms, and quietly leaves, saying that she is thinking about joining a monastery. He asks her about it again. She says she will pray for her husband's peace, her son's sin, and her own sin, because she did not stop him. She surrenders to God. Everyone is horrified by such a statement. Hercules smiles at her and says that if she has decided so, then he does not dare to object to her. He asks if she has already decided which one. She leaves and replies that she has decided. She says goodbye to him and leaves, closing the doors behind her. There is an awkward silence as Caroline Gallionis calls Hercules. Hercules tells Galphus Gallionis and Christopher that there will be a meeting today, so they should gather everyone. They obey. He says Adrian will be put on trial. At this time, Adrian, in a rage, spoils all the property with scissors and shouts why his brother is so big-eyed, because he should have just died quietly. The servant tells him that his mother came to him. Adrian orders that he kicked her out. He is sure that she came as usual to make him his vassal. He is angry that he is also gathering elders. If he bribes the aristocrats with his sweet speeches, then he is finished. He represents the process. Hercules gathers people, addresses them as respected fathers and those who will only become them. He says that their country is in danger. He claims that heretics and ill-wishers have taken away their lands, and if this continues, they will lose everything altogether. Hercules says that they are obliged to take their rightful place, for which his grandfather fought, and now he has a strong army at his disposal, so their chances are great. He clenches his fist, raises it, and shouts that he is declaring a war for the return of the lands open. Everyone is shouting and supporting him. He gets even more tense from this. He looks at the portrait of his and his father and asks why he did not give the crown to him. He sits in despair in an empty room. Things are scattered everywhere. Everything is broken. The curtains are torn and drawn. On a dark night, Adrian lies in bed and wakes up to a noise. He looks up and hears a creak. He sees in front of him the bright soul of a girl with short hair. She looks at him with great interest. Adrian looks at her in shock, and the girl wishes him a good evening and asks if it's not a beautiful night. Adrian starts to blush. He rudely asks who else she is. She smiles and says that she thought people liked that kind of greeting. Suddenly, she spreads her wings. She says she is an archangel and the first of the 3 pillars. Her name is Jibril. Adrian is shocked and asks if she is a real archangel. He is so shocked that he falls out of bed. She laughs and asks if this is the first time he's seen an angel, who replies that he couldn't even imagine them dressing like this. She pulls him to her and tells Adrian that she has a message from God for him. She says that Hercules will soon go on a hike to the Principality of Trebizos. She says that thanks to his achievements and the surrender of Panther Dalios, he has gained tremendous support inside the country, and now he wants to return all the lost lands. She explains that the recent gathering of the nobility was for this very purpose. He is outraged that Hercules is arrogant because of just one victory. Adrian raises his head and asks where they got this information, and she says it's firsthand. She tells him that she just overheard them. As she said before, they will start with the Principality of Trebizos. They gathered to discuss this. Hercules then suggested starting with Dalios. It is important for him to learn the analysis of the defeated enemy. He is interested in his point of view. Panther Dalios replies that it is clear to him. He says that the reason he lost was because there was no one else who could lead a huge army. If there had been someone else, they would have been able to better distribute their troops and resist them. Panther Dalios says that he absolutely did not have the opportunity to choose another commander. Hercules asks why. He replies that he does not trust mercenaries. They are easily bribed with money and lured to the other side. In fact, the emperor demonstrated this. Hercules proudly replies that he is right. Hercules says that if it were a plateau, they would have easily coped. The panther Dalios asks, well, who would go ahead with inferior force? Hercules says that the most important reason for his defeat is that he stole his father's lands. He says that he understands why he did this and stands in solidarity with him, but it makes no sense if he doesn't deal with the country afterwards. He says that without understanding how to run a country, there is no point in expanding possessions. Panther Dalios looks away in shame. Hercules laughs and says that's for sure, but he won't let that happen and will do everything right, so Panther Dalios has to work hard. Hercules says that they have listened to the opinion of Panther Dalios, so he suggests moving on to the Lemurians themselves. Fiscal says that if we recall that battle and the instructions of Hercules, then there are no complaints about the strategy. Hercules says that the main issue is weapons. Carolina Gallionis asks again. Hercules replies that it is true, it is the infantry weapon. He says that during the battle in Personia, the infantrymen mainly used swords and defenses, and one of the groups was armed with long spears. These spears are called saris and were used by the Lemurians several millennia ago. Due to its length of 5 meters, arming cavalrymen with them is much more effective than giving them swords. However, in the last battle, he realized that it was a bad idea. They were constantly hitting the ground and were not suitable for close combat, which immediately destroyed the formation. Most simply threw down their spears and took up swords. Their kingdom is surrounded by deserts, plains, and mountainous areas. Nomads and mountain dwellers are observed among the enemies, who have adapted to their reliefs. If they encounter the fact that they will not be able to use weapons because of the landscape, it will be bad. But they also cannot divide weapons under certain reliefs. It is better to use spears instead of the same daggers. They should use something 7 meters high so that the enemy cavalry does not reach, and use shields to protect themselves from arrows. Such a distance will be an advantage over the enemy. At the same time, it should be light, and so as not to interfere, so as not to destroy the formation, and so that you can wear a shield. He asks his people if there are any such weapons. Everyone is sitting in suspense and does not understand what kind of request this is. Panther Dalios asks if maybe then just use everything at once. Fiscal says that it's easy to say something, but it's impossible to bring this to life, as he believes. Panther Dalios asks, since the emperor asks, what then remains? Hercules remembers something, scaring them with this. He says that they will equip their army. Starting from this, they will train until the performance itself. Jibril overhears all this. She says in Adrian's room that this is how they prepare step by step. He calls his brother arrogant, but he really doesn't care about soul techniques. But then Jibril adds that their campaign will fail, and he asks what that means. She says that to get to the principality of Trevisos, they will go by sea. However, under the wrath of the spirits, they would be dragged into the storm, unable to find a way out. They would be swept away by the waves, and eventually they would all drown. Adrian doesn't believe it and asks how it can all go so smoothly. She replies that, surprisingly, in one of the worlds, the army of a huge kingdom twice fell into a storm, and after that they began to compose legends about the god of thieves. She says that somehow Hercules does not even suspect this. Right now, he is gathering an army and preparing for a campaign. Adrian thinks about it and then says that he doesn't care. Jibril looks at him questioningly. Adrian says that the throne that he, the father, was supposed to inherit, that he continued to defend the country, traditions, he should have inherited all this. He says he loved his father more than anyone. However, his imperial magic came out of his father and moved right into Hercules, who did not understand at all what was going on. He was the most hated of the heirs, but the father, the vassal, and even the magic of the legacy all chose Hercules. His country, his father, he loved them more than anyone. Perhaps he is a little more capable, but he took absolutely everything from him. When his mother saw the magic seal, she told him to obey Hercules. But his father, mother, and crown are all his own. He will kill the one who stole everything from him. He wants to regain everything for himself. Jibril says, with a smile, that he seems to have suffered a lot, but now everything is fine. His master himself protects him. He does not understand, she says, that soon he will take his rightful place and lead the empire to prosperity. She abruptly pulls him towards her and says that she will reward him with something to make it happen. Adrian asks Jibril to wait, but she does not obey and continues to push. He shouts if he can really become an emperor. At that moment, he wakes up abruptly, looks around, and realizes that this is a dream. He breathes heavily and thinks, what nonsense, really, where would an archangel come from here? Then he notices a paper in the bed. He opens the scroll and sees that it is a route map to the Principality of Trabzon. He doesn't understand what she's doing here. A white feather falls on his bed. He picks it up, looks at it for a long time. He starts laughing, saying that finally he will be able to get him out of his place. Then a man comes to him and asks for forgiveness. He is surprised that Adrian has already woken up. It's Dominic, and Adrian says he's on time. Adrian tells Dominic to assemble the troops, who asks if he really means a tax to finance the troops. He replies that this is not the case. It is not a tax. Adrian says that Hercules is going to march to the Principality of Trebizos. He says that they will attack him as soon as he returns. Dominic asks if he's going to start a riot, but why all of a sudden he replies that he's just finally lucky, and now God is on his side. He abruptly tears off the curtains, covers himself with them, and says that all the dirt and bitterness of his life, he will make you feel it all and kill Hercules. Hercules tells his subordinates that they can perform according to the plan. He entrusts the final preparations to them, and he will tell the people that the lost lands will once again belong to them. Christopher replies that everything will be fulfilled. Hercules says that his brother has already tried to kill him once. Most likely, he will try again. Carolina Gallionis squeezes Hercules' hand. He turns to her. She says with burning eyes that she will not let this happen. She grins at the thought that he won't make it anyway. He's sure he still hasn't noticed that he has everything in the palm of his hand. Hercules goes out to the people on the balcony. People are standing below and listening attentively to him. Hercules announces everything to them with outstretched arms, while Adrian looks out of the window. It's been a few days since Hercules started the plan. Everyone is discussing that no one heard anything like this during the conversation of the Council of Elders. Everything is as Archangel Jibril said. Someone says that something is still unclear. It was said that this vision came to His Highness Adrian in a dream. Adrian is unhappy with this title. The guy gets scared and immediately apologizes. Everyone stops abruptly. Adrian says to listen to him. His father should have chosen him. Not Hercules, but him, the beloved of the gods and the true emperor. He says that this message should be compensation for all his suffering, a chance given to him by the Archangel Jibril, and he cannot miss it. He tells people that the same thing happened to them. If it weren't for his brother, their situation would be much better. They fearfully reply that of course it is true. Adrian turns to the Bulgaronians and asks, because they also had trouble trading with him. The Bulgaronians are a nomadic people, mostly comprising one race, but there are also elves of royal and noble blood. The main trading currency for them is sheep. From time to time they are subjected to actions from the Lemurians, all because Hercules is not satisfied with the terms of trade. They tell Adrian everything, who replies that he understands them even without words, and he would certainly like to take advantage of their barbarity on the battlefield. Then someone knocks hard on the door. Adrian gets angry and asks what kind of noise it is. A servant comes in and shouts that there is news. He shouts that Hercules and an army of 40,000 Lemurians have been sunk in the Ardal Sea. Everyone starts to panic. Has it really been sunk? Everything is like in a vision. Domenico asks Adrian what he's going to say. Now Adrian understood everything. It really was a message. He turns to his comrades and says that they are the best of the best, that they did not listen to his brother's speeches. He comes forward with the thought that this moment has finally come, at the dawn of his brother's defeat, and his dawn he will grant honor and glory to each of them. He's shouting that he's the next emperor now. Everyone is shouting and wishing him glory. Adrian thinks that he will be able to kill Hercules. If he relied on the map of the sea routes, Hercules should return to this port, and they would meet him on the plateau closest to the port. He plans to throw him off his horse and grab him. He wants to squeeze out his tear-stained eyes with his own hands, deprive him of his head. He gathers numerous troops and enjoys the thought that Hercules will pay for everything in front of his father's grave. He stands with his troops and waits. He says with a smile that he is still late, or there is such a small detachment that it is not visible. Here they announce to him that the troops of Hercules are approaching. He smiles greedily. He thinks that he has already been waiting. This is the only day when he would like to meet him. He longs for Hercules to show him his smug face. Hercules' troops stand with their weapons. Hercules sees Hadrian from afar. Adrian looks at the army of Hercules in horror and does not understand why this happened. Where did he get such a huge army from? His sergeant replies that they don't know. According to the report, most of it should have been left at the bottom of the sea. Adrian says that according to the prediction, they shouldn't look so lively and healthy. He thinks that the Archangel's instructions simply cannot be wrong. They had to sink, incur the wrath of the sea spirit. He shouts that he would never believe that fastidious sea spirits could like a man like Hercules. He asks, even if he says so, what they can do. Hercules sees their negotiations from afar and says, it's fine, they're already nervous. He asks Caroline if he sees this, and she awkwardly replies that she will probably refrain. A man comes out from behind and says that this is a pathetic sight. Without even checking the information, Adrian believed that his army had sunk. This is Edmund, the half-brother of Hercules, who says that it is unfortunate to have a completely non-thinking brother, which only spoils his blood. Hercules laughs at his words and says that this is their common brother. He apologizes to him for the slip. This man, Edmont, is a half-elf from a military family, a stepbrother on his father's side. During the war with Panther Dalios, he was assigned the task of guarding the capital. However, this time, the protection was entrusted to Galphus Gallienus. Hercules asks Edmund why Adrian is so different from them. It would seem that they lived in almost identical conditions. Edmund says he'll take his words as a compliment. Carolina Gallienus adds that Titus should also be standing here. Titus refused all this and shouted childishly that he did not want to go camping. They tried to persuade him and said that this was an order from Hercules, because now preparations are underway for the campaign. He is outraged. What does he care about their wars? He was visited by a muse. If he throws the brush right now, he will become a disgrace to the family. He gets worried and shouts that if Adrian tries to kill him while he's sitting here. He replies that dying with a brush in his hands is the cherished wish of any artist, so he will never go. Well, the servant reports to Hercules like that. Carolina Gallienus says that, in her opinion, he won't come to the meeting either. Hercules says that it's because he's being treated incorrectly. Let him listen carefully to what needs to be done to make him move. He asks Titus how about sketches outside the castle. Titus turns abruptly and, with burning eyes, says that he is, of course, coming. Hercules says it's easy to bribe him. Edmund says that he seems to be surrounded only by such guys. He doesn't even know what else to say. But even now, when he introduces one of the soldiers of the imperial army, all he does is continue to draw nonsense. Hercules replies that there is nothing to be done if he stays in his castle. There is a high probability that he would have been killed by Adarin's men. One way or another, he will serve him. He watches Adrian figure out the situation and thinks that Adrian is a poor thing. He didn't notice anything at all. My father repeatedly bowed his head to the nobility so that he would become emperor, and my mother, violating the ban, bowed her head to him just to make amends. He thinks that his parents loved Adrian the most. He mentally tells his brother that he did not steal anything from him. Without making such a mistake, he could have become an emperor. He says he's sorry that now he has to take the country his parents loved into his own hands. He says they're starting a sweep. Panther Dalios says that's how they found out about all the participants in the rebellion. Thanks to this meeting, they can suppress Adrian and all his accomplices, tearing out the infection in the bud. Hercules says that rather than a gradual purge, it's better to have a full-scale battle once and show that it's better to stand up to him. Galphus Gallienus informs Hercules that he has arrived. He happily says that he has finally come, taking the scroll from the soldier. He asks him how Christopher is, and Christopher replies that everything is fine, but he was upset that he would not be able to personally witness the altercation of his nephews. He laughs and says that he is being careful himself, and has even returned to the castle for protection. He says that we need to finish as soon as possible and come back with souvenirs and stories. Adrian doesn't understand why Mrs. Jibril told him that. Wasn't his army supposed to sink? He remembers her saying that everything is fine and that the Lord is on his side. Sweat is streaming from his face. He does not know what to do. He clenches his fist and thinks that this is not so. This is undoubtedly a test given to him by the Lord, and he should easily overcome it. He asks what the size of their army is. He is told that the number of infantrymen reaches 18,000, 2,000 crossbowmen and cavalrymen each, and another 8,000 cavalry in the form of support from Bulgaron. So there are only about 30,000. Adrian asks him about the number of troops of their enemy. He replies that they are outside the walls of the fort, so it is impossible to calculate the exact number. The regular army includes about 20,000 infantry and about 10,000 archers and cavalrymen, totaling about 40,000. Adrian replies that it is clear to him. It turns out that the difference is 10,000. He joyfully shouts that they have every chance of winning. He is sure that they will definitely win, so they will finish everything on this plateau. Then someone asks to wait for him and says that they should avoid the battle on the plateau. Adrian irritably asks him who else he is. He replies that his name is Oscar Ullman. He asks Adrian to think again. Adrian is informed that this is the second son of the younger Ullman family. The Ullmans have long owned the vast southern lands of Missouri. They are the economic backbone of the entire empire. With such huge financial power, the long-eared race is jealous of them. However, the Ullmans also have a similar feeling towards the elves. In the past, these factions have clashed more than once in debates or even fights. And at the moment, the Ullmans have joined the so-called Adrian wing. Unfortunately for Oscar Ullman, the second son of the Ullmans, he was assigned as an advisor to Adrian. Adrian is outraged that he is not even from the main branch, and he, completely nameless, will advise him something. However, it all depends on what he says. Oscar replies that he understands him. He says that at the moment, they and the enemy forces are almost equal, but the enemy general Galphus Gallienus, who personally trains and commands the army, all fighters are elite, considers heavy cavalry a dangerous enemy. As for their own army, it is diverse and has many problems, such as interaction. In addition, they are dressed in armor of the last generation, which they are not used to. Adrian says that in this case he doesn't see any problems. Oscar replies that it's not just that. Adrian asks what else. Oscar is silent in thought. Finally, he says that according to Mrs. Jabril's prediction, the army of Hercules was supposed to sink, but they see a completely different picture. The enemy is well prepared and ready for battle. In this regard, he has a bad feeling. As if they have lured them into a trap, they have a much better chance of winning if they fight from the fortress and not on the plateau. He asks Adrian to think again. Adrian, in a rage, grabs him and shouts that he even understands this. Is he really advising him to hide in a fortress? He screams that he has suffered enough humiliation from his brother, and even if it is the purest plateau, he will force him to eat the earth, and he, this nameless one, should not dare to order him as an emperor. He abruptly throws him down and says that if he has understood everything, then let him go to his place. He silently stands up and asks him to forgive him. At this time, Adrian shouts that God himself is pleased with them, so they should not lose their fighting spirit. Oscar leaves thinking that Adrian will not live. Hercules will definitely win. He must come up with something to bring out their army. It has been 3 days since the army of Hercules and the army of Hadrian met. Both sides completed the construction of fortifications. During all this time, there was not a single provocation towards the army of Hercules. No shots from archers, no throwing stones. War was coming, but stagnation on the battlefield continued. In the outpost of the army of Hercules, Carolina Gallienus looks around. The panther Dalios uses an eye and says that the enemies have about 30,000. He says they've prepared well. Hercules calls it rot, but they are still aristocrats. It's not a problem for them to assemble such an army. With their empire, not only does the emperor have an army, the aristocracy also has a certain number of warriors. If we compare this empire with another, it is extremely unsafe. Even after repelling the attack of robbers once, it is impossible to eradicate them. Most of those who possess property have means of protection with them, so it is quite obvious why the aristocracy has mercenaries. Unlike mercenaries like Panther Dalios, aristocrats have owned property here and there since ancient times. The main house has its own vassals, the branches have their own, and those have their own, and so on. If you combine their power together, you can get a really strong army, according to Hercules. He sighs and says that's why he doesn't like aristocrats. Because of their blood ties, they inherit power. He says that blood ties are power, a huge power that came out of nowhere, and giving up such power is like giving up an innate talent given by God. Panther Dalios smiles and says that this also applies to Hercules, who agrees and says it's true. However, these blood ties turn into ordinary red water. If they start to rot, the noble blue blood is simply devalued. He offers to return these ties back to God, here and now. Hercules asks someone from below what they're going to say, if they don't think so. People from another race come to them. Galphus Gallienus wonders if the Bulgaronians are not on the enemy's side. He does not understand what they are doing here. Hercules comes down and says that he called them. He says that Bulgaron's troops are masters of action. Their advantage disappears in open battle. The fact that they openly joined the battle seemed strange to him, so he sent an envoy to them. Hercules says that what they are now in front of them is living proof of that. He addresses them in their language and asks what the young Bulgaronian general will tell them. He replies that it's unexpected. How does he know their language? He replies that if you search, then it's not so difficult to find a personal teacher. He smiles and says that he will be a good friend and ally. It does not become the emperor not to know their language. Does he really not think so? A general approaches him and asks if he is the emperor of Lemuria. He is surprised that he is so young. Hercules calls him to his tent, and Galphus tells Gallienus that the rest is up to him. Galphus Gallienus bows and obeys him. Hercules tells the general that this time he is thinking of turning a blind eye to what he saw. He does not understand and enters to him. Hercules offers to conclude an agreement. The general sits down. He looks nervous. Hercules gives the document and says that the agreement is divided into 4 parts. Mutual. It is forbidden to attack. Launch official trade routes. The Bulgaronian king is obliged to send troops at the request of the emperor of Lemuria. Lemuria will pay an annual tax to Bulgaron. He reads it and asks what it is. Hercules says that they are a nomadic people. If they continue to abandon agriculture, then life will not get better, and maintaining health with meat alone is clearly not the case. To start farming, you need technology, grain, and so on. To get them, you need to either rob or start trading. In this case, they decided to use the battle for the throne to loot what they needed. And if Adrian could not ascend the throne, did they really think that Hercules would compromise with them? They begin to reflect. Hercules says that they are allies. They will think that they just stumbled. They wonder how far he is able to read their actions. The panicked general replies that he has understood everything. He will sign the agreement, and Bulgaron is no longer involved in this war. The general is afraid of who this guy is. Unlike his predecessor, he feels terrible pressure. He sees this piercing gaze that knows literally everything. Hercules shows the document and says that now they are bound by an agreement, and now he tells his Bulgarian friends to disappear. The general realizes that one wrong move and Hercules will just eat them. Adrian panics and does not understand what the Bulgaronian army is doing. He orders them not to dare to destroy their willful attitude. A soldier approaches him and says he has a message from the envoy of Bulgaron. He informs them that they have concluded an agreement with the Lemurian Empire and are withdrawing from the war. Adrian hits the soldier with great force and screams, swearing at the nomads, which is why they cannot be trusted. He continues to beat the soldier and shouts that everyone is trying to betray him. He does not understand why and why. At some point, he calms down, sees that the soldier is unconscious, breathing heavily, and then begins to smile. He gets up and says in a trembling voice that everything is fine, that everything is only getting more interesting, because God is on his side. This is a test, after which he will ascend to the throne. He mutters to himself that the difference is always 10,000. It's nothing. He is sure that he will defeat Hercules. He's talking to himself in a frenzy that Mr. Brill told him that the future of Lemuria is in his hands. He just can't lose. He says we need to stop throwing stones. It's time to take up arms. That's when the soldier gets up. Hercules sees the Bulgaronians from afar and says that they seem to have fulfilled part of their agreement. He thinks that this is good. Unlike the personal armies of aristocrats, which are difficult to command, the Bulgarian army is national and a level of command is completely new. Now the main obstacle has been eliminated. Hercules pulls out his sword and says it's time for them to fight. He orders all his men to go to their places. Hercules screams to destroy the traitors, and Hadrian screams to kill the false emperor, because God is on his side. The attack begins, the archers shoot arrows, the crossbowmen too. The sky is strewn with different arrows. The soldiers don't stop and keep attacking. There is a war going on. Countless arrows are flying. Crossbowmen do not stop shooting arrows while using wind spirits. They are told to dance after the arrows. Hercules sees from afar and orders the heavy cavalry to go forward. There, a soldier gives everyone a sign. Carolina Gallionas and her uncle rush forward. Adrian realizes what kind of sign this is and shouts to his soldiers to stay out of the way and smash their cavalry to smithereens. The soldiers obey and go on the attack. One soldier goes forward and asks the winds to grant him protection, wishing that the warrior of the false emperor standing in front of him would die. They clash in battle. The soldiers ask the wind spirits to help them once again, to show the power of their empire. Galphus Gallienus is moving swiftly forward. A fire is burning behind him. The enemies opposite are looking in horror, waiting for their fate. As soon as Galphus Gallienus passes by these soldiers, there is no living place left on them, only ashes. Galphus Gallienus laughs and calls them weaklings. Galphus Gallienus declares to everyone that they cannot stand before his thundering footsteps. At this time, the soldiers call Caroline and Edmund traitors, servants of the false emperor. Edmund tells Caroline that he will go ahead. She gets scared and asks again what he is doing. He replies that he hasn't been off the battlefield in a long time, so he wants to get some exercise. Carolina Gallionis steps away from Edmund. Those soldiers who are riding towards them are shouting that the brat is running away, so let one deal with the old man, then follow her. Edmund confidently looks at his enemies and says how sad it is for him. It is inappropriate to call a man an old man who has lived a little more than them. The soldiers look at him questioningly, not understanding what he is talking about. Edmund sighs and says he'll start with them then. He summons his spirit Andromalius and tells him to point out the place to these ignoramuses by talking about these soldiers. His spirit is a woman with a hat and patterns on her face. Suddenly, a dark force engulfs several soldiers and immobilizes each of them. They do not understand what is happening, because in a moment their weapons have disappeared in their hands, and they cannot move. The summoned spirit of Edmund, Andromalius, his ability to randomly and within a certain radius steal things from people, a maximum of 300 people. The enemies are riding horses and realize that they have neither a spear nor a helmet. They demand that all this be returned to them. Then Carolina Gallionis rushes straight to the soldier, who confusedly tells her to stop because he has no weapon. Carolina Gallionis summons her spirit Eligos. She kills a crowd of enemies with one blow with the help of Eligos, shouting that it hurts her to look at them. She shouts to Edmund that it's her turn, and he reflects that it's great. She has signed a contract with the strongest spirit, Eligos. Carolina Gallionis is a wonderful knight, and he is happy to fight alongside her. Suddenly, he sees lace underwear in his hand. He looks at Caroline and is awkwardly silent. He says irritably that they will return them after the fight. Andromalius steals mostly weapons and armor, but occasionally comes across other things. Panther Dalios laughs and tells Hercules that his army is strong, who replies that it's all because he spent a lot of time training. Initially, he wanted to send halberdiers to the front line, but the enemy sent crossbowmen to the vanguard. It's pointless to send halberdiers even with shields against them. Hercules admits that he still wanted to experience it, but he rejected the idea. Panther Dalios adds that this is a wise decision. He is sure there will be many more opportunities. Panther Dalios asks where Titus is. Hercules points his finger to the side and replies that he is there. While the crossbowmen are shooting non-stop, suddenly a huge tiger spirit appears in front of them, which suppresses the crossbowmen. They're screaming in horror at what kind of monster it is. And Titus stands next to one soldier and says that it's beautiful, let him destroy them all. He holds a brush in his hand, stands next to the canvas, and says that he is pleased with his creation. Two soldiers stand next to him and ask Titus to hide his head, because the arrows are flying. The two of them protect him with their shields, and Titus asks them to try to protect him. He takes a brush, calls Decembria, and says that they are starting their next creation. Next to him, an eye-catching flower hovers. The spirit of Titus, Decembrian, the juices released by this spirit, give life to paintings. That is, everything he paints begins to come to life. Titus says that the bird will be next. Let him cut the traitors with his claws. This is how a bird with two heads is born and flies to attack. Titus shouts at the eagle to fly forward, calling it a beautiful creation. The eagle scratches the enemies with its claws, preventing them from fighting. Titus says with a smile that it has been so long since he invoked the spirit. Despite his fatigue, the paintings are simply beautiful. There is no better feeling for him than reviving his works. Suddenly, the eagle's wing gets an arrow, and a hole appears there. Titus makes an awkward noise. He was told to hide better. The enemies realize that the animals are made of paper. The second one smiles and says that since this is the case, there will be no problems. He calls it a simple daub. Titus, of course, hears the last phrases. He starts screaming. Is he laughing at his art? If that's the case, then let him die. He draws a lot of animals. The Panther Dalios wonders from afar if everything is going to be all right with him. Hercules replies that Titus's spirit is quite useful, but he couldn't stand it much. He thinks it's only enough for a couple of paintings. At this time, Adrian sees the whole situation and calls Hercules the false emperor, not understanding how he dares to defeat them. He analyzes that Edmund himself is not a threat, but this brat, Carolina Gallionis, is interfering with them. He asks to kill at least Titus. He is no longer even able to use the spirit, so why is he still alive? He shouts that the crossbowmen will not last long, in which case he gives the order to everyone to go forward to attack. This order carries the sound to everyone. Hercules sees it all from afar and shouts that their infantrymen have started moving, so they must act too. He orders Titus to be taken to the fortress and the crossbowmen to disperse and retreat. He shouts to the halberdiers to go forward. Hercules tells Panther Dalios that, as they planned, the right flank trusts him because he knows what to do. He replies that he knows everything. Hercules walks away from the main fortress, saying that it's time to look at his brother's stupid face. He will look forward to it. Adrian says from afar that his drums are getting on his nerves. He doesn't understand what Hercules is up to. An easy-to-understand strategic map of the two factions is described. The battle has entered its final stage. Hercules orders the archers to retreat in turn from both sides, and the halberdiers to cover their retreats and prevent the enemy from passing. Panther Dalios gives the command to the archers to run and the halberdiers to hold the formation. The spearmen must cover the flanks and help hold the formation. The enemies begin to attack, but they are confronted by a crowd of warriors who realize that they cannot advance. Hercules, through the spirit of communication, tells them to preserve the strength of their army and keep their people from advancing. Adrian is angry and does not understand what these fools are doing. He orders the light cavalry to go to protect the infantry. They obey him and go forward. Galphus Gallienus sees it all and screams that he won't let him do it. He calls upon his spirit and covers the whole field with his fire. The horses neigh in fright and start to panic, while the soldiers stand helplessly, not knowing what to do. Adrian gets even angrier at Galphus Gallienus and shouts that even if his father thinks highly of him, preferring his stupid brother to his eldest son is unacceptable. Oscar turns around and doesn't understand at all what this stupid Adrian is doing, because he gives bad commands one after another. He reflects that, besides, judging by the movements of the Hercules army, he is moving towards their flank and plans to surround them. He realizes, looking at the current formation of their army, that Hadrian's army is playing to the tune of Hercules, in which case they will lose to his army. He clenches his fist and does not understand what to do. Suddenly, one warrior falls next to him. Arrows fly towards him, but then Oscar protects him with his shield. The warrior is surprised, and Oscar asks if he can get up, who says he can and gets up from the ground. He understands that there are many privates and subordinates of the House of Alman here. He cannot allow the Alman family to be interrupted here. He thinks that he has to save all of them. He shouts to his warrior that they will definitely return alive. He goes forward. Adrian looks and does not understand what is happening. The soldiers do not advance, but the enemy also does not express a desire to move forward. They continue to fight. One warrior is stripped of his leg. Adrian sees that one slipped by. He doesn't understand if even the archers don't shoot. He's Adrian with no idea where they're going. Then he watches closely and realizes that the soldiers are just passing by. He panics and is horrified. He immediately shouts that this cannot be because this is a formation. He shouts that this is bad, so the soldiers have to retreat. However, Galphus Gallienus Carolina himself comes to the soldiers, catching them off guard. Adrian freezes in horror, doesn't say anything. Hercules is informed that they have dealt with all the light cavalry. He replies that it's great. It seems that Adrian finally understood. Once upon a time, there lived an old general, saying that this legendary general passed through the mountain ranges, making his way across half of the continent and cornered the Lemurian Empire and became famous for his strategy. Many have tried to apply this winning strategy, but without a proper understanding of the true nature of this strategy, they all met with painful defeat. This strategy is based on several details: the difference in the number of cavalrymen, the combat power of the soldiers, and an exceptionally capable commander. These three conditions must be met. Using incredible tactics based on the speed of movement of armies leads to great results, truly a strategy worth taking to the grave. All this speaks to a full encirclement strategy. Hadrian's warriors realize with despair that they are all surrounded. Adrian shouts at everyone to break through the defenses quickly. He will attack their archers. The warriors are confused, and Hercules gives the command to attack, lowering his raised hand. Arrows are fired at the warriors. All die in agony from hitting them in the body. Adrian falls down powerlessly and says with groans that this is impossible. He is painfully aware that his army has died. This strategy of complete encirclement is a guaranteed victory plan. Therefore, it is incredibly difficult to achieve. And in the first place is the difference in numbers, which can be achieved by removing the Bulgaronian cavalry, which poses a real threat. They were able to provide favorable conditions for the removal of the Bulgaronians from the battlefield without sacrifice and reward, exactly the result that Hercules hoped for. Fortunately, they canceled their mercenary contracts, expanded the standing imperial army, and thoroughly trained them. The Lemurian imperial army definitely had a hard time, relying on unpredictable mercenaries in the past to fend off the Bulgarians. Hercules was able to implement this encirclement strategy only because he carefully selected his generals. Choosing the right weapon is also a crucial factor in this battle. They would not be able to outsmart the enemy soldiers if they had pikes. It would be the same if he equipped all the soldiers with halberds. They would not be able to fend off all the enemy soldiers. In other words, you need to take the most suitable weapon to get a strong army. And the last piece of the puzzle is the Panther Dalios. Until now, Hercules cannot give out complex orders to an army of 20,000 people on his own. It cannot be denied that just because he entrusted half of the army under his command, they can use an encirclement strategy. Rebuilding an army from scratch, improving the combat capabilities of soldiers, and removing foreign forces from the battlefield, which allows competent generals to completely dominate the battlefield. The warriors surrender and ask to be spared. They promise that they will pay any amount they say. One keeps saying that he's a vassal of one of the 77 sacred nobles. If he dies, then their houses will not be silent. He is killed in an instant, just like the others. They cover themselves with shields. One asks them not to push and thinks that if they cannot get out of the encirclement. One shouts that if Adrian is really a noble, then the path will do something. Let him start negotiations with Hercules. They panic. They put pressure on each other. They don't understand who they're fighting for in the first place. Hercules smiles, and then laughs loudly and asks if they see with their own eyes. Don't they feel? He shouts at Adrian. He shouts that he is really grateful to him for this. Thanks to him, he can repeat this incredible strategy from the legends with his own hands. He is grateful that he allowed him to be a younger brother, grateful to him for being such an obedient brother. Panther Dalios hears all this and thinks that it has been about 1,000 years since the encirclement strategy was invented, but now in front of him is a guy who is barely 15 years old, has successfully mastered it, and the number of people who tried to copy it and failed is countless. He reflects that the average life expectancy of elves is 200 years, which means that he is waiting for another 105 years of experience. He smiles at the thought. He says that he is looking forward to the future. Hercules hears through the connection and asks what he just said. Panther Dalios replies that it's nothing, just had thoughts out loud. Panther Dalios says that now the only thing left to do is to cut them off so that they cannot break through. He asks Hercules not to remove the protection. He replies that he knows this. He says that it's still hard to maintain an environment strategy. It's like filling your skin with water to the limit. Panther Dalios says that, however, in this position, while the arrows are falling on them, he does not think that there will be a competent commander who can calm the panicked soldiers and unite them to break through the formation. Hercules says that it does not matter, as long as there is no worthy commander among them, they will never get out of the encirclement. Not a single fly will escape from the trap. Suddenly, a warrior breaks through, and Hercules and Dalios the panther look on in shock. It is Oscar who declares that the House of Almond will not be defeated today. He shouts at everyone to go forward. Everyone obeys and follows him. The warriors of Hercules shout to restore the formation faster and not let anyone escape. Hercules calls Panther Dalios and asks if he could break through the encirclement alone. He replies that if he's lucky, he'll get out alive with a 1 in 100 chance. Hercules replies that he understands him, but he thinks the chance is 1 in 10. He says that this is not what decided the outcome of the battle. Besides, it would leave a stain on his reputation. Panther Dalios laughs and says that even the great general of the imperial army of Lemuria abandoned the battlefield a couple of times. This is not something to be ashamed of. Hercules smiles and tells Panther Dalios to watch. It seems they have just found another outstanding talent. Most of the nobles, led by Hadrian, were destroyed by a hail of arrows surrounded by the forces of Hercules. As for those who led the mercenaries, who stayed behind, who did not take part in the battle, did not raise funds for the army, they were all arrested by Christopher's men. As for Adrian, the leader of the rebellion, Edmund discovered him on the fortress. All that was left of him was his helmet. Adrian arrived to the Bulgaronians to ask for asylum from the kingdom. Everyone looks at each other in disbelief, then nods. At the moment, Adrian is detained by soldiers. He shouts how to understand all this. He asks them to let him go. What are they even up to? He speaks in his own language. Adrian demands that he speak so that he understands him. The Bulgaronian replies that even if he did, he himself is aware of what is happening. While trying to find refuge in the kingdom of Balgaron, Hadrian was arrested and brought before the court of Lemuria. Thus, Hadrian's plan to usurp the throne failed miserably. Hadrian's army was defeated. And so, the traitor to the throne of Hadrian appeared before him on his knees with his hands tied. Christopher, Caroline Gallionis, Galfus Gallionis, and Hercules himself are standing in front of him. On the third day after the suppression of the uprising, Hadrian, the leader of the uprising, as well as 100 other conspirators, will be sentenced for their crimes. Hercules demands that one aristocrat answer briefly and clearly why he took part in the uprising. He replies that in order to protect Hercules from dangers from the inside. Hercules says, if that's the case, then let him answer him why he then proclaimed Hadrian emperor. He gets scared, starts to doubt what to say. Hercules grins and then says it's because he was dragged away. He agrees with the shock. Hercules says that the aristocrats, who had more power and authority than him, tricked his fortune and his soldiers into their hands, whether he even knows who is responsible for this. He thinks in disbelief. Hercules says that, although it looks like he's just trying to trick him, he understands what he's driving at and shouts that everything is right, he was tricked. Hercules asks who it was. He begins to say that there was a traitor who deceived him. Then he mumbles, not knowing what to say. Galfus Gallionis understands that he is saving his own skin by throwing the blame on more influential aristocrats. If he values his life so much, they should join his majesty and not kneel now. Hercules says that if he is actually one of the participants in the uprising, he will be executed along with his family. But his family has served the Julianos family faithfully for many years, and he cannot turn a blind eye to this. Hercules says that, as the head of the family, he is sentenced to 30 years of hard labor. He will look after his family, vassals, and their families personally. That's all. He bows and thanks with all his heart. He will not forget his mercy for the rest of his life. They're taking him away. Hercules says about his words that he will not forget for the rest of his life. He has no doubt that in 3 years, no one will remember about it. He calls the next one and asks that he must have been deceived. He asked the same question to all the lower aristocrats and thus received a legitimate reason to commute the sentence. There were several reasons for this. You can't just execute all the aristocrats. During the uprising, they crushed many noble houses. Eventually, their influence faded away. The resulting void in power will open up opportunities for the younger houses, who will surely take advantage of this and, having gained influence, take over the positions of the former great houses. As Hercules has already said, having lost the remnants of influence, the nobility no longer poses a threat to the imperial power. They lost everything during the uprising, and even without his help, one name will remain of their former strength. For this reason, a sentence to imprisonment, fine, and forced labor will be a reasonable decision. Hercules calls the next one. The third and final reason, one of the key figures on Hadrian's side. He had considerable influence in the political arena, the highest aristocrat and part of the semi-elven nobility. He is aware of his situation and believes that they will not dare to execute him. But why? Because he has apologized in writing. And even if all those present in court are canoes of the imperial court, there are those among them who remain in debt to him. With their support, he will be able to get away with it. Being confident in his safety, he knows that in this situation, Hercules will have to resort to drastic measures. Hans is a self-confident fool. He starts to talk, to let me explain myself. Hercules interrupts him and says that several charges have been brought against him. Hans did not understand this statement. Hercules tells Hans that he is being sentenced to imperial abolition, and from that moment on, he will lose his noble status. He is terrified and definitely did not expect this. Hercules says he will be isolated for the rest of his life, and after his death, his remains will be burned. He begs him to wait, to spare him. Hercules wants his suffering to be eternal. Hans screams to do something wrong. He can't do that. He's a high noble. How dare he treat him like a rabble? It's better to kill him. Just kill him. Let him die with honor. Hercules calls the next one. From the very beginning, his target was the upper houses of the nobility. In short, he wanted to punish the usually untouchable high nobles by shifting responsibility for the actions of the lower nobles onto them. He ensured that those present in the courtroom did not dare to challenge his decision. In addition, the nobles who had to surrender their recent allies are now unlikely to decide to oppose him in the future. By starting a coup, there is no guarantee that he will save his life, even if he decides to join forces with other houses. One of the main tasks is to allow the younger ones to see the full picture. The imprisonment and confiscation of property for the lower nobles and the imperial abolition for the higher nobles, this method allowed him to rid the Lemurian imperial court of a couple dozen great houses. Finally, the culprit of the whole celebration comes to them, Adrian. Christopher immediately pushes him so that he falls face down. He wants to object, but then everyone shuts his mouth, saying that he is standing in front of the emperor. Hercules smiles at him and tells him that they haven't seen each other for a long time, calling Adrian his older brother. He asks when was the last time they had a face-to-face conversation, or perhaps this is the first time. Hercules says that he only heard about him from his friend Lord Dominic. He asks if that poisoned melon was his idea. He says that because of this, he saw for the first time how the poison affects silver. It was amazing. The dish, as he notes, was also wonderful. He thinks salted melon, sweet tomatoes, and poison are such an exquisite combination. He says he didn't eat it, so he doesn't know for sure. He adds that the battle on the plain will definitely go down in history. In many ways, of course, due to the use of the tactics of complete encirclement. He is willing to bet that in several hundred years, he is the only one who has successfully applied this strategy. Hercules asks him if he even realizes that before the Balgaron cavalry left the battlefield, they had an excellent chance of victory. In an open battle, with the support of Balgaron and the mercenaries they had gathered, they might have been able to win. Adrian here declares that he is not worthy of the imperial throne. Hercules is silent. He says that he should have inherited the throne after his father. He kept saying that, but from the moment of his birth, his father gave everything to him, a brat who had no right to the throne. He shouts to all the aristocrats that they were fooled by this false emperor. They should not let him continue to sit on this throne. This is a prophecy sent down to him by the great archangel Gabrielle herself. He screams in madness that he was chosen by the gods themselves. He is the rightful emperor of the great Lemurian Empire. Everyone begins to wonder aloud if he really said about Jibril, the archangel, whom no one saw, revealed herself to His Majesty Adrian. He shouts that he is telling the truth. He has a feather from her wing as proof. Hercules says that he understands. Since he says so, he asks Lady Jibril to invite him into the hall. If he can, he will recognize him as the true emperor in front of everyone present. Carolina Gallionis begins to panic and wants to stop Hercules. Adrian smiles and shouts that he will regret these words. He begins to scream and call for Lady Jibril, the great archangel. It's time to reveal the truth about the lying emperor to everyone. Let him send this emperor to the depths of hell. There is silence in the hall. He does not understand why she does not come. Hercules continues to wait. He asks to wait a minute, promises that she will definitely appear. Hysterically, he shouts Jibril's name, that he is right here, begs her to appear in the hall, calls her over and over again. Hercules turns to him and says that he has only 3 conditions. If he follows them, he will live. First, let him swear loyalty and unconditional obedience to his emperor. The second is to recognize the illegal invasion of his territory, and the third is to take responsibility for the actions of the great nobles who followed him. He says that only then will he be able to spare his life, as his precious mother wished. Then he begins to say in a broken voice that he recognizes full responsibility for what happened and begs him for mercy. Hercules says that this is a wise decision and says that by this decree he is sentenced to life imprisonment. Hercules orders him to be taken back to the dungeon, but then Adrian pulls a knife out of his hands. Adrian takes out a pair of scissors and removes the soldiers from himself. Caroline Gallionis is scared. Hercules is surprised. Adrian's scissors are covered in blood. Adrian jumps on Hercules and screams that he is going to die. Here, Carolina Gallionis hugs Hercules. Then Christopher defends. Galphus Gallionis pulls out his sword. Jibril appears right in front of Adrian and tells him that this is not allowed. Adrian stops in shock and recognizes her. He starts to get indignant because she said that he was the true emperor. Why then she protects this imposter? Everyone is in shock. They don't understand what he is doing. Is he really talking to someone? Jibril smiles and says that she never talked about murder. She says that Adrian is an imposter. He will never become emperor, no matter how hard he tries. Adrian desperately asks what she is talking about, because he was chosen by the gods. She replies that it's not true, it can't be true. She asks if she wants to know why. Here, Jibril transforms and becomes a demon that belongs to Hercules, who smugly looks at Adrian. He realizes in horror that he has been deceived, and Hercules wishes Adrian luck. He screams in madness, swears at Hercules. He shouts that Hercules is the devil. Let him give him back his crown. Galphus Gallienus says he's completely blown away. Christopher says that under no circumstances should they mention this in front of His Majesty's grave. The she-devil congratulates Hercules, who only reacts briefly. Thus, all the perpetrators were punished so that the festive banquet was held without problems. Finally, a boy comes to them, and Hercules asks him if he knows why he is here. This is Oscar Ullman, who is surrounded by the evil Galphus Gallienus and Panther Dalios. Oscar immediately bows and asks for his mercy, because he has drawn his sword against him, so he is ready to take any punishment. This was not what Hercules had expected. He says he got it all wrong, he's not going to judge him, and Galphus Gallienus and Panther Dalios are asking to stop bullying the boy. Hercules says that he has an offer for Oscar, who asks what he wants to say. Hercules asks Oscar if he wants to become a general. He's perplexed and recalls that he fought against his country. Hercules says that he's been watching him and the house of Ullman for a long time. However, since the head of their house sided with Adrian in the struggle for the throne, he had to be arrested and stripped of his lands and rank. When the head of their house decided to side with Adrian, he had to follow him. He had no choice, so he ended up on board a ship going down. For this reason, his house was also given away. It greatly influenced the outcome of the war. Oscar says that, in any case, he is sure that there is a more suitable candidate. Hercules asks what he's talking about. He says that Oscar was the one who was able to escape from the encirclement. He is surprised and asks if Hercules really saw it. He replies that, of course, he saw it. He says that the ringing tactics were designed to sow panic in the enemy ranks, depriving them of the ability to resist, but he broke out of the ring on the first attempt. Being inside the ring, under the onslaught of enemy forces, Oscar remained calm and thus was able to save the lives of his subordinates. Under equal circumstances, anyone else would have decided that this was impossible. Hercules says that he appreciates his leadership qualities. A powerful army needs outstanding generals. With his help, their country's army will become even stronger. He also believes that this is a great opportunity for him to restore the honor and glorious name of his house. Most of the members of their country were stripped of their nobility and sent to prison. Despite the fact that they escaped the highest punishment, the imprisonment broke the head of their house. Because of this incident, their house was severely damaged. He thinks that if he agrees to His Majesty's proposal, he will have the opportunity to restore the former glory of the House of Ullman. Besides, he turned a blind eye to all the crimes of his family. After all that had happened, I personally invited him to join him and recognized him as worthy of his trust. Oscar bows and says that maybe he lacks experience, but he asks them to take care of him. Hercules hopes that he will work with these old people. Oscar smiles broadly at him. It's finally over. In the dead of night, they're all feasting on victory. More precisely, Caroline Gallienus and Hercules alone. Carolina Gallienus is happy that it's over. Hercules says that right after he dealt with his father's former vassal countries, his older brother immediately rebelled. Who would have thought that the emperor would have a lot of worries? Hercules says that because of this, after such work, all the food seems especially delicious. Carolina Gallienus smiles and says that the chef has really come to life lately. She was so glad to hear that Nala was able to influence the chef after all. Hercules is outraged why she is talking about others when they are finally alone. She panics and says that this is not what she meant. She blushes and says that she has been waiting for this opportunity for a long time, too. Hercules says with a grin, so that's why she chose such a revealing outfit, he still can't forget how much she blushed in a maid costume. Carolina Gallienus pulls at his clothes and admits that this is how it is. Because she's his sweetheart, after all, isn't it strange to want to give something to the person she loves? Hercules rushes to hug her and shouts that it's just fine. He hugs her to him and asks when they should go on a second date. She says that the rose garden opens in a month. The chariot races will start soon too. They will have a lot to do. Carolina Gallienus is outraged that he can't just forget about his duties. The next month will be full of meetings and checks. Hercules indignantly replies that he knows everything. He says that the empire in its current position has only slightly strengthened its position since his father's time. They still have a lot of problems ahead of them that need to be solved. He says that it is necessary to improve relations with neighboring countries, reassign generals, and rebuild the imperial army. It is necessary to solve the problem of hunger and unemployment, the management of newly annexed territories. He says that a lot of time will be spent only on the western and eastern factions. He wonders if he has enough life to deal with all this. Carolina Gallionis replies that if it is Hercules, then she is sure that everything will work out. He has already achieved so much, in her opinion. Carolina Gallionis says that when support is needed, she will always be here to listen to him. She is silent, they look at each other. He says that then he can thank her in advance. She does not understand and asks what he means. Hercules removes her hair from her face and tells her to become his wife. She begins to panic. Hercules gets up, tears off bunches of grapes, and makes a ring out of a branch for her. He puts the ring on her finger. Hercules says he loves her, he wants her to become his wife, and together they will build a bright future for this country. She starts crying and agrees. Here he is, the emperor who was able to breathe new life into the Lemurian Empire, which was once on the verge of falling into the abyss that engulfed 3 continents. His name is Hercules the First. His exploits, his reign under the title of Emperor Divine Light, the story of the emperor who conquered 3 continents continues now.